like to help with that. But then I was like, "Now, can he come on the field trip?" And they're like, "No, he can't. He can't go down to the. You're not going to take your dog to the wall." And I'm like, okay,
Ew.
all right, I'll leave him here then.
He could get a little dog. He could get a job being a guard dog.
I think that'd be great. Alternately, if I could have found a tiny dog sombrero, that would have been amazing. I think he'd really pull off a sombrero.
Yeah.
Wallace is good with hats.
Yeah, he's so. Wallace is
I feel like
surprisingly docile when it comes to costumery.
Among the many reasons where you would be improved if you were gay, is that your dog would
Reason
look good
48,
in hats.
lay it down.
Add it there. Like you have a superb appreciation of musicals. You would
Very strong thoughts on personal fashion.
Very strong personal fashion.
Owns a rainbow suit.
Yeah, own a rainbow suit.
And your dog would look really good in a variety of hats.
Yeah, you're right. Man. Okay, science, get on it. Make that gay pill. Second that gay pill comes out, I'm going to rock the gay world.
I'll tell you what, I'm sure that there'd be a line of volunteers to try to do the impossible.
Yeah.
Maybe you should just dabble. See if you like it.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm 40. I could, what was that Louis C.K. thing? Maybe the second half I'll do gay. I don't know.
Well, he's certainly one for judgment.
He's definitely a good exemplar of life choices and career choices, yeah.
This is going to be a low-energy show.
Yeah.
I know, we're all exhausted.
Very low-energy show.
I went to bed about 11:45. I probably got to sleep about midnight, and I woke up at 3:45.
I went to sleep drunk at midnight.
By the way, I really appreciate because Justin made a good point that if we caught a 5 a.m. flight from McAllen back to Austin, that we'd be able to join our friend Jen in person rather than remotely. And also...
Is that why you guys did that?
Well, I just do what Justin tells. I've given up arguing with Justin on shit. The only thing I truly will argue with Justin on is thermostats. Other than that, it's just like whatever he wants to do.
I cede.
Whatever he wants to do. Like Justin's like, hey, we're going to Missouri. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know I was doing that with my week.
Yep.
We're going to Missouri. We were going to get up at 5. And as I left, I saw Justin and Brian, and I was like, Justin, I want you to be hungover. Yeah. Because you're a morning person and I am not, and I want you to match my energy through chemicals. So I appreciate you, Justin, getting hungover so that we can meet in the middle in terms of energy levels.
So you guys were on an airplane this morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
5 a.m. flight from McAllen, Texas this morning.
To Houston to here. We got into Austin about 8:30.
But you didn't ask me if I was here until like 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Okay.
Well, I think the actual logistic concern was... Because if I had not coordinated with Justin, I thought about driving down there, and I would have just recorded at the hotel. And as you know, hotels are kind of a crapshoot when it comes to internet connection. And so maybe it would have been great, but maybe it would have been a problem.
No, the realistic issue was because there's not a ton of flights out of McAllen. There are no direct flights from Austin to McAllen, so you have to connect. And essentially, we would not have gotten back until like 5 o'clock in the afternoon if you don't take that 5 o'clock in the morning flight. So that was...
you like the early morning flights. Let's not pretend you don't.
I like being where I need to be earlier in the day than later in the day.
I like to roll the dice. I like to I'll fly out at like 6 p.m. But if that gets delayed, it's the last one. Yep. Like you're either going to get that sweet flight. You're going to have all day to fuck around or get work done. And then you're going to catch that direct flight from LaGuardia to Tulsa or wherever it is that so many people fly, like me. And then, like, if anyone in the country sneezes, they cut all the direct flights to Oklahoma. That is like protocol one. Is like, there's some guy flying into Chicago. He had a fight with his wife. Cut all the flights to Oklahoma.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a 7 p.m. flight, but I was in bed by 11:30. It wasn't too bad. I'm just like tired in general, but not as bad as you guys. I didn't realize you flew today.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I have to be on a flight. Tomorrow morning.
Oh, that's right. You're going to South Carolina.
Yeah, because stupid Nikki didn't drop out. She teased everybody that she was going to drop out and then did a speech where she was like, you all keep saying that I'm going to drop out. And it's like, bitch, you put out a press release saying that you were going to address the state of the race.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you say when you're
the state of the race
out.
Is she's still running. How is that anyway?
I shouldn't have called her a bitch.
The part where politicians
I'm a little tired.
We're in the
She's a
fun part
warmongering
where
bitch. It's fine.
The runner-up politicians get really angry towards the end because it's grueling to run. Like back in 2016 when Rand Paul was running, I remember he was like, it was more novel at the time to do like iPhone stuff, you know, where you're like, we're just on my staffer's iPhone, and like that was more novel. Yeah. And they were doing like FAQs, and like the first question for the audience was, "Are you still running for president?" And his answer was, "Yes, get over it." Which it is like, oh, he's done. He is not enjoying himself. The campaign has ceased being the normally euphoric, you are the savior of America vibe that politicians feed off of, and it's turned into a grueling process that has no light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that might be where Nikki's at.
Did you see that Marianne Williamson? She suspended her campaign.
Yeah.
Then 48 hours later, the entire news cycle was like, Biden's just too damn old. And now she's putting out these videos where you can kind of smell that she's regretting suspending the campaign. Yeah. Because now the news cycle is exactly what she was hoping it would be.
Yeah, the problem with that is that you need to pay people.
Well, she said, she's like, I'm still on all the ballots.
Yeah. Well,
so
this is a question that I had for Justin a while back was, you know, if you're already on all the ballots, like I don't know, Chris Christie or somebody like that, why not just, you know, quit campaigning but stick around in case the front runner goes to prison or dies? And Justin's answer was that's why people suspend their campaigns rather than drop out of the race. Is that the suspending just means I'm not actively doing anything, but I still am on all the ballots and shit.
Yeah, you're also not you're not gathering delegates, which is the only reason why the Nikki thing makes sense now. Is that okay? Well, you'll gather delegates that theoretically you could use on the first ballot of the convention vote. Now, first ballot of a convention vote has not mattered since the 60s, so I don't exactly know what worth that currency is, but or if it's worth getting drubbed in your home state, which is what's going to happen in South Carolina. But yeah, anyway, I almost had a weekend with my wife. Instead, I'm heading on out to Columbia.
Wow. We got out of that one.
Yeah. We were amenable to doing Nevada, as you'll recall, but then the Republican and Democratic parties decided to have simultaneous caucusi and primaries.
The Republicans decided to have both because Harry Reid hates Iowa and wanted the first in the nation vote to be in Nevada.
Yes.
He worked his entire career to do it.
Las Vegas is truly the bellwether of America.
Which,
in a way.
Clark County.
In a way, yeah.
Look, I love Vegas. I love Clark County. I am enamored with all my friends that are there.
Black Rock City, hell of a place.
It is a great community. They don't care about politics. Yeah. It is a small town where they are diverse in terms of their political opinion, and they don't want to step on each other's toes. I drove through neighborhoods for an hour and a half in Vegas because I wanted to count yard signs. That's usually one of the old school campaigner tricks to get a sense of enthusiasm. Not one. Not a single yard sign.
I really appreciate the now like rapidly dying American perspective of I don't want to talk politics with strangers. Like I felt like a moral comeuppance. I think it was the day I flew out of D.C. when I quit being a congressional staffer. Now, keep in mind, at this time I am a Democrat working for the beleaguered Blue Dog Caucus as waves of very angry Tea Partiers come up to yell at us and try and get my friends fired. So I did not like the Tea Party. And I was flying back to Oklahoma, and I saw a guy that I was like, that guy clearly came up with the Tea Party. And so I sat down next to him at the airport and was like, hey, man, what are you up for? Because I wanted to fight him.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I came up to meet with some people. And I was like, yeah. So like, you're part of the Tea Party? And he took a deep breath and he went, young man, you seem like a nice guy. I've always felt it's kind of impolite to talk religion or politics with strangers, but I hope you have a nice day. And I was like, I'm the shitbag.
The one time,
wow.
The one time that you that's like almost like a chick track or something like that. The one time the man of faith strayed from his path of politeness and he found somebody more polite than him.
Yeah. And I was like, yep, you were correct, sir. You have a good flight too. Thank you for visiting the nation's capital. And
I apologize.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Andrew Heaton.
I'm Jen Brainey.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We're going to talk about the southern American border as Heaton and I literally just arrived back from a trip down there over the last 2 days, and Jen had some homework for us to do. We will be answering those questions. Also, Donald Trump ordered to pay after interest nearly $500 million because of a civil fraud trial in New York City. Was that over the top? We discussed that as well as your emails. Let's get right into this border thing. So we neglected to mention on the free show. We did mention on the Patreon show last week.
We had a great conversation on the Patreon show. It wasn't even about Britney Spears or conspiracies or porn or anything. It was actually about journalistic ethics.
Yeah.
And I meant to do it on the main show, and then we just had too good of a main show, and it didn't fit. But
the downside of our program, it's always just too goddamn good.
Damn good.
Yeah.
But Heaton and I went to I think it's safe to say a junket.
Yeah, it was a press junket.
A junket that was organized by Americans for Prosperity
Foundation.
The
Coctopus. And the Coctopus was on display as we were handled by probably a dozen, maybe 24 people that were a part of 4 different organizations that were all essentially, different versions of each other. All very, very nice people. And I would like to start this off by thanking them for their hospitality and flying us out. But Jen, you had a prior commitment, and you had some ethical concerns about going down on their dime. So instead of it just being Heaton and I talking about a field trip we went on that you didn't go on, I figured it'd be best to do this segment by going by questions that you had for us going into it.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start with number 1. Where are these people coming from? Do you want to fill out that question?
Kick this one off.
Hold on. I was going to say, Jen, is there anything more to that other than the simple question there?
Well, so I had some questions for you guys before you went, but since you've kind of already brought it up, I am curious, before we get to the substance of what you saw, I am curious about the Coctopus vibes of it, the bias of it. They flew you down there, they put you up in hotels, they chose who you talked to. How did you feel about getting information from them?
Well, I have had a lot more exposure to the Coctopus than either of you. And my experiences in the past have been very positive in that regard. I have not found them to be putting out weird propaganda. In my experience, they do a very good job of giving you a bunch of information, and somewhere in that information is the bit that's very important to them. So I didn't feel that it was propagandized. The part where you could see the folks really get into it was when we got into labor law, when we got into immigration visa law. I felt like that was where a lot of the intellectual focus was for the people involved. Obviously, they wanted to talk about the border and things, but I didn't get a strong. I don't know. I can cobble together what I think is their goal, but it was not. I didn't feel like I was beaten over the head with it at any point. So I didn't get a super propaganda-y vibe, but more of an exposure vibe. I don't know, Justin.
But are you worried at all that you only got one side of a story?
I'm not in my case, because I've been pushing immigration very hard for 20 years now, going back to when I was a columnist at the Oklahoma Daily. And I did an episode 2 years ago on open borders with Brian Kaplan. I did an episode with Anna Gorish, my friend who's an immigration attorney, on how difficult it is to get immigration visas. At this point, I think the only viewpoint that I would really need to look at in order to counteract my own would be someone that really just doesn't like immigrants at all, or doesn't want any immigrants to come in, which was not what we were exposed to. So I wasn't too worried. But the other thing, too, I should mention is I'm very, very pro-immigrant, and I want to increase the amount of legal immigration coming in, as I've stated on the show multiple times, which is where they are. So a lot of what they were saying
Why? They want the cheap labor?
I do not necessarily assume that they're evil, Jen.
It's not evil. It's just why would the Koch brothers and their empire want more immigration?
I think we can safely say that the Koch brothers are libertarian ideologues, and that they are very
dead.
Sure. Yeah. Actually, there's 4 of them, but two of them don't talk to the ones that we know as the Koch brothers.
They hate each other.
Yeah.
So the Koch brothers were
Yes.
Libertarian ideologues. It makes sense to me if you are if you strongly believe that open free markets are a vehicle for human progress, that you would view that not just in terms of internal domestic markets, but in terms of people going across borders and goods going across borders, and that you would tend to have a pro-market view of labor in general, regardless of where it's coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what they're selling. So
what are they selling?
They are selling the Coke empire. It's weird because you say it and immediately people are, I believe, and I don't know if this is your case, but I would find this to be generally true, that people think of the Coke empire specifically in reference to a post-Citizens United Obama era mindset of money is evil and it's ruining politics, and the Koch brothers are the mascot of that. That is what my experience is. I don't know if that's yours, but that is what I think people tend to think of when they think of the Koch brothers. Past that, everything else that they disagree with politically kind of gets glommed onto it. And so if you don't follow stuff on the right particularly closely, then you don't realize that they've been at war with what we now understand as the MAGA right for years. They were the people that
they are the globalists that the MAGA right despises.
They're savage capitalists. Like, they just free market 100% is my take on them.
Sure. I think they would probably have a more nuanced take on it.
As a resident capitalist, I don't particularly view it as savage, but I think we can say they're full-throated capitalists.
I also do believe that they think this is a very, very high-stakes game where a lot of money is being spent on politics, and they are not going to be shrinking violets and pretend that they are going to sit on the sidelines. Like, if you want to know what I think their absolute, like, their enemy was, the border was one element of it, but the stuff that they were the most full-throated, like, growly about was elements to the H-2B visa, which is the migrant visa. So it means people coming in, doing seasonal labor, and leaving legally. The ones that we have for that legally. They were, like, absolutely pissed off about Biden and his labor secretary, in their minds, kowtowing to labor unions like the AFL-CIO and others that were mischaracterizing what the wages that are mandated for those visas should be. So somebody who is...
Let me guess. They thought the wages were too high.
They make a very, very a specific point to say that it is too high to the point of driving farm businesses out of business. Mm-hmm. And specifically, it's in characterizations like, if you drive a truck for 10 minutes a day and your farm is in New York, your truck driver is now classified as a chauffeur, and now they are paying chauffeur rates and not truck driver, seasonal migrant truck driver rates. That is the stuff that I believe they were like, no, this line in the sand, here and no further, politically, like, on the side. Like, that, if you wanted to know what the timeshare sales pitch was, that's where I felt it. The border stuff is really just a reason to get people down there, because what they want to do is talk about immigration pathways like they have forever, and they now have an opportunity. The first time, I think, politically, since they got their ass handed to them by, like, the Breitbart right in the aughts with, like, the Marco Rubio push for citizenship. They were behind that on the right. And they got their ass kicked by the Tea Party and the populist right on that. And it became, okay, well, Paul Ryan's for open borders, yada, yada, yada. Now I believe they see an opportunity to have these conversations again in a way that isn't oppositional to the most popular element of the party. And so that is why the border is a priority for them now. At least that was my read on it.
Okay.
That being said, I mean, I personally have less of a ethical dilemma for going on junkets like these, in that I don't believe that my perspective on it is going to be particularly shaped if I walk in knowing exactly what it is. And if it's a shorthand that I use, or there are people that I meet along the way that I can then vet and use in my own information going forward, then cool. But I've been on a few of them. I went to Europe and Israel on the dime of the Anti-Defamation League back when their mission was very, very clear that they were just, a pro-Jewish organization. And, I went to Europe and drank with a bunch of kids that were on Birthright Israel. So it's like, it was...
And in our conversations, you've been pretty on the side of Israel. So this is kind of why I'm concerned about it, is like, you don't realize the bias and the effect that it has on you. We all think we're above it and it's not going to affect us. My concern is that it would affect me.
Okay.
Can I jump in?
I think that is yes. In our conversations about that particularly, I think that there are a lot of things that we can have, but I would not limit my exposure to the subject on Israel.
And I'm not
I
saying
have been there, so I mean, I guess that is an element to say I have been there.
I'm not saying anything about you personally. What I'm saying is we don't realize when things are affecting us. We all, because both of you said, like, well, I think I'm above it in some way. Like, I know what I'm getting into, so it's not going to affect me. And that's exactly why this shit works. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, in that case,
I find that to be reductive.
Listeners, in that case, throw more junkets at me. Like from my perspective, I've got two ideas going into this. One, like when I was at the Blaze, I was regularly the odd man out, as we talked about on the Patreon episode. I've argued with Glenn Beck about why I'm pro-choice to an audience of probably 30 million people. If I can go into work every day and lock horns with all of my colleagues for months, I'm not that worried about getting exposed to ideas from a group. And that's what I do on the show regularly. I mean, a lot of my guests reach out to me with a book. When I had on Cenk Uygur, I mean, I didn't seek him out. His publicist seeked me out. And
are you at all concerned not of being exposed to certain information, but of not being exposed to certain information?
Sure. But in this case, I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp of immigration in general and been following it for a while. Where I would be worried about it is if I didn't know about the field and I didn't know what the contours of the field were. So theoretically, like we're going to talk about Trump later, right? I know for a comedian that does not have law school experience, I know constitutional law reasonably well. I don't know civil law. I don't know criminal law. So if somebody were to take me and expose me to a perspective on criminal law or civil law, I don't know what the contrary perspective is. But with this situation, I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of where the camps are, and I already have a pretty good idea of where I stand on it. Yeah. So I'm not going in carte blanche. Like, I don't really know that anything changed from my position on this trip. I do have more data that's kind of following into my existing paradigm. But yeah, I think where the ethical considerations for me would come up were if I were being paid to endorse a position, that would be a thing. If I were being, if I felt indebted, that would be a thing. And yeah, if I didn't know the actual contours so that somebody was controlling the full Overton window. Where I will give some credence to this, because I did experience this when I was at the Blaze or when I was at Fox, is I think that the media in general is not good. Let me rephrase this. The media can't tell you what to think, but it can tell you what to think about. So I do think there's something to that. If you're being exposed to certain ideas, even if you're forming contrary perspectives, there's a certain amount of getting you to focus on a particular topic that's doable. But yeah, in this instance, I don't know. I view this as I've been a very full-throated advocate of immigration for a while. I wanted to go talk to people around the border, and I wanted to talk to border agents because I feel like they're the ones that I've been giving the least amount of attention to the last 10 years, and it's sort of incumbent on me, or to put it another way, Jen, I think this is me filling out the other end of the spectrum, because I've been a very, I've been saying for years, double, triple the amount of legal immigrants coming in and kind of ignoring all the people down at the border. So I thought this is a good way for me to fill out the gaps in my knowledge.
I guess my concern would be that they would feed you Border Patrol agents, like they would almost like pre-interview them and make sure that these are the Border Patrol agents that, let's say they're pro-wall, I don't know, but that would say that this wall is super necessary and just not present you the ones that say, well, it also cuts off this community from that one. Like before the wall, they were going back and forth and it was easy, and now we've split a community in two, but you're not going to hear from those people because they've been pre-vetted. Like my biggest concern is omission. Mm-hmm. An Israel trip, I would be concerned that they would show you all the best parts of Israel and not take you to Gaza, not show you the West Bank. Like I would be afraid of the omissions. And so it's not like
we were provided a member of the Palestinian Authority for to back up a fucking ADL trip from 2003.
But like, yeah. It's the bigger picture is what I'm talking about. Like when you get these junket trips, like that's what I would be afraid of is the omissions. If you think that's the multivitamin that fills out a worldview, then yes, it is dangerous.
If you look at it as information that then you can put together with other information to form a healthy point of view, then I don't think that it is harmful. Now, yes, there might be omissions, and yes, it should be good. It is a keen reporter's instinct to think, where am I not seeing something?
Yeah.
And you should investigate that, and you should use what you have and use the stories that you've heard from various different points of view to double check that against things that you think those arguments would be intellectually weak against. But to not go on the journey to begin with is, I think, intellectually fragile.
And again, I'll throw out for any listeners that are concerned about this, feel free to invite me to contrary things. Like I would love it if I get, I mean, not just in terms of this, like I get, one of the accusations I get is I go on a fair amount of conservative media. I would love to go on more progressive media. Like I'm very much open to that. I'm surprised I'm not invited more, because I think I'm fairly palatable.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, we're both probably going to be on Newsmax.
Yeah. Well, we made friends with a guy on the
There
bus.
you go.
But like also I'm going on Fake the Nation with Negin Farsad next month, and I'll go on a lot of stuff, and I get booked to do stand-up comedy, and I would love to go to, I'd love to go to the DSA and things like that. So for me, I want to broaden the horizons, but in the same way when I have authors come on my program, they've got a specific thesis and worldview that they're promoting, and they're not trying to give me the full picture. They're trying to give me the very specific thesis that they have, but part of me putting together what I think involves talking to them.
I don't believe there is an honest broker. I believe that it is our job, or at least my job when I was a more rigorous reporter. Now I'm just an asshole who talks about what I think. But if you are actually trying to synthesize information for people, there is no honest broker. You're never going to get somebody that's honest. And that's partly I guess for me, it's not even...
I wouldn't say honest, I would say biased. Everybody's biased and there's no way around it.
Well, yeah. but no, I would say at times you need to err on the side that people are being actively dishonest with you. Like, that is part of... If you're a reporter, and let's take it out of politics. Let's just say it's crime, right? And you have a mother whose son was killed and they are crying, but you don't know if there's something more to it, or the story that is being said is not exactly what happened. You have to be distrustful of a crying mother whose son's not there anymore. That's what makes being a reporter being an asshole. It's what builds calluses in you, because you have to look at the world from a specifically distrustful perspective to do a good job. Otherwise, you are actively just kind of spreading misinformation or perpetrating a reality that isn't the case. You need to give it a fair airing. And so, that's where my background is. That's what I am. That's where I am coming from. So I still want to hear from everybody, and I would prefer. Let me go to my one shot. I'd prefer that you pay for my hotel while you give me your story. But otherwise, I don't believe that, aside from now, we just have a bunch of numbers that if I have a question on immigration stats, there's somebody that I can email for more context on it. If I have a question about H-2B visas, I will have somebody that I can email about H-2B visas.
But isn't that part of now they've become a trusted source for you with all of their, I think that's how this all.
Yeah, but that's if I parrot them directly, yes. But I don't plan on parroting them directly. I plan on using them for a perspective that at this point I know where they come from. Does that make them totally intellectually worthless? That they are identified on the spectrum? No, I don't think so.
I'm thinking, I do need to round out. I should round this out, and I'm glad that you've pushed on this, Jen. I ought to interview somebody that's an immigration restrictionist. I've not had an immigration restrictionist on the show, at least to talk about it, because that would be the contrary position to me and the contrary position of AFP. So bringing on somebody that thinks that immigrants suppress wages or that they can't assimilate, I ought to interview them, which would be uncomfortable, but I should do that. Also, I'll note real quick to tag it on there on the airplane thing. I lost money on this trip. I had to get, I had to put Wallace up. So it'd be great if somebody flies me out, but I don't want people to get the impression that this was some sort of gift basket deal where we took goodies home or anything like that. The goodies were content. We did get content out of it. And,
I got an episode.
Yeah, and I'm going to get 2 episodes out, because I'll do the episode of the trip to the border. And also, as I was telling Jen off camera, I met a former circus performer that really cares about H-2B visas. And I was like, I would love to talk to you about that. So I'll probably get 2 episodes out of it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. And again, would love to cultivate relationships with people that I disagree with on other things.
Yeah. And I mean, just to make it clear again, I'm not judging you guys for going. I would consider it. This is the first time anything like this has ever even been offered to me. I'm just very like, these are genuine questions that I'm asking.
Well,
I'm not judging you guys. I don't think you did anything wrong.
I think like as we talked about on the Patreon show, like I didn't have any moral qualms about this, but I respect that if something gives you pause, you should think about it, right?
Yeah.
Just to throw it around, you would feel the same way if like the Progressive Policy Institute invited you to look at a union gathering.
If not more so, because that's what I'm branded as by other people, but like because that would be theoretically the team people think I'm on, I would be even more worried about like, are they just going to feed me things that I'm probably predispositioned to, at least with, you know, the Coctopus, I'm walking in there all kinds of suspicious. Yeah. So no, it really any group. I'm just so distrustful at groups at this point that I kind of feel like the entire way I've structured my career is like, I'm really careful about my independence to the point that like I had to come to Austin for a month even to meet you guys in person to even do this relatively fluffy show. Like I'm very careful about my independence. And so if I were to do a border trip, I would feel more comfortable paying my own way, setting up my own interviews. Like that just feels like the pure thing to do, but that also could just be overkill. Like these are questions I have not grappled with yet.
Again,
so that's why I'm asking.
I think your
these
instincts
things.
are right, and that like so. When I do explainer video, I do funny explainer videos for Reason. Now, in that case, I'm already simpatico with Reason, and I know the Bragg brothers very well, so we don't even really need to have discussions at this point about things that I'm comfortable saying on camera. I've done funny explainer videos for other groups, and when I do, that's something that I'm very careful about because it is me on camera taking a position and getting paid for it. And so when that happens, I am very scrupulous about we need to be on the same page here because you can't hire me as a mouthpiece for a position that I don't believe in. I'm not mercenary. What I'm willing to do is go, we disagree on this, but we agree on this, and I'll do a video on the thing we agree on. That's fine to me, but I can't be bought and paid for. So I think that those things are accurate. I think it is very different how we're doing this. So like on my end, I do a lot of policy interviews on the political orphanage, and I do them with a ton of think tank people. So for me, it's always good to be getting those. Like I've had a lot of people from Cato and Brookings on. Brookings is a centrist, center-left institution for people unfamiliar with it. Cato is a libertarian institution. I would love to have more progressive connections. And that's like one of the things that frankly frustrates me is that it's harder for me to get progressive guests in the think tank world. But I would love to have them. And like, for I think any guest that comes on the program, I give them a fair shake, and I'm, if anything, way too innocuous in terms of pushback, but for me, I like, or like I'll do when I did Judge Week, which was very popular on the show a few years ago. I very intentionally brought on somebody that was living constitutionalist, that is to say a progressive jurisprudential view, and an originalist, that is to say a progressive conservative view, and then I brought on somebody that was libertarian. So for me, I try to augment my information by cultivating these relationships, and as Justin points out, knowing that they have a perspective and a viewpoint that they're promoting. Yeah,
and for you two in particular, I will say that if, I think that these types of trips can be dangerous for people that don't have the self-awareness that you have, that aren't as careful about the interviews they choose as you, Andrew, or someone who doesn't have the reporter background. Like, I know that you distrust everyone, Justin. We have bonded on that.
Hell yeah.
So I feel like you two are better prepared for this, but there are people that would not be aware of the bias in what they were fed. They'd be like, hotel, flight, fuck yeah, let's go. And they wouldn't be aware that there were ownership structures behind these organizations. Like, I feel like that's where it gets... just like as a structural thing where these trips can be a little bit more concerning for me. But I know that you two are aware of what you went to. I just don't think that everyone who says yes to these are.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's unserious people.
Yeah.
Like, and also there's people, for me, the greater issue that I would actually have to wrestle with would be if I were offered a job literally anywhere at this point. Like there was a point in my career where you could say, okay, well, you go to the New York Times or you go to the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, and that's like the peak of just political journalism. And those days are gone. Everything is now branded right or left on some level. There's no television network. There's no outlet that doesn't almost define itself by its bias. The Post and the Times specifically so, as they have become actively antagonistic toward conservatives, and that is their business model. They have created, and you can see it in the numbers, specifically with the Post. So for me, if let's say I really impressed somebody beyond a junket like this just for what I do, and they were like, oh, we want to bring you in the politics podcast, and it was a great deal, and I was comfortable with all the numbers and freedom to it, and I would still own the feed, like, I would really have to think about it. I would have to think about it if it were, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or, let's be more realistic, something that was in a blog network or on a lower level in terms of broadcast. I'd have to really, really think about it, because like that to me is selling my credibility. I could go on a million America First junkets, a million Socialists for America junkets, and I'm fine. And again, pay for my hotel. But I would feel I was compromising my integrity if I took a check, that then everything else that came out from that fire hose, if I wasn't just a guest, if I was getting a paycheck from it, everything else from that fire hose was looked at in a certain way. I think
you got
that
a
would
speaking fee.
Oh no, I will also take speaking fees. I'm saying, but if I were working for an outlet,
yeah,
like, one of the dudes that was on this junket, he's a host on Newsmax. He was a funny guy. We had a good time on the bus, and so he's like, oh, if you guys want to come on, got our numbers, so we'll do the show. But that's being a guest, like I was a guest on fucking Russia Today.
Yeah,
I didn't. Yeah.
I wish The Guardian would reach out to me. I would love to be a guest on program. I think I'd be like a polite, palatable guy who's like, I have a different perspective than you that would actually be very nice. Like I can play with a lot of people.
People that want to book me are niche audience conservative outlets, both here and in Great Britain and Russia, apparently. Like, that is an internationally bent niche conservative audience. That's who wants to book me as a guest. I'm here for everybody. I am here as a wealth and font of knowledge. I'll give you the same segment on MSNBC that I would give on Newsmax.
I've done Persian Exile TV twice. I did it once at the midterms, right before we all went on camera.
Yeah.
And then they called me again. And we're like, "Can you explain?" Like, and they just like I'm friendly now with the dude that runs it, but they're just like, "Could you explain what's happening?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll try to do that." And usually it surprises them, because they like the last time they booked me and they thought I was going to be like a hardcore libertarian character, and like the afterwards the guy's like, "Are you a moderate?" And I was like, "I don't know what I am, but like but a lot of the time they want to book you for those." But I'll reiterate this. Like, the reason that I feel empowered to do this, and I think that I think your instincts are good, Jen, to be very, very careful about being tainted knowingly or unknowingly by somebody else. I think that's a very, very good instinct, and something in our line of work we need to be careful about. I feel like I have a pretty thick skin at this point, in that I have worked at some of the organizations that Justin brought up, and I was the odd man out there arguing on a regular basis. And so I feel like if I was able to be in those environments and not absorb the surrounding ethos, Volksschong, whatever, and come out more or less the same as I was, I'm really a lot less worried about going on a 24-hour press junket. I think that it's going to be less effect on me than the previous gauntlets were.
All right.
I think we've covered that.
Let's go.
So, since you did do it, I want to know what you learned, like starting with, what did you learn about the people who are coming? Like, who are these people? Why are they here? And what's the percentage that are seeking asylum? Like, because this seems to be branded as an illegal immigration thing, but asylum seekers are legal. So, like, basically what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, I think I can tackle this. This is one of the reasons I wanted to go down there. Is, again, from my fairly comfortable position of like, why don't we triple the amount of immigrants? Why is everybody talking so poorly about these people? They just want to make a good life. By the way, I've not changed any of my positions. I still believe all of that. The two things that I was struck by in terms of figures, that so far as I know could be corroborated and were taken by CP or by official government statistics, are that the amount of people coming through the border undocumented is much, much, much higher.
It's off the charts. I've checked it myself.
Yeah, it's like I'm in the general ballpark when I say this. It's like an average over the last 3 or 4 years. It's an average of 140,000 people a month. Whereas if you go back like 12 years ago, it was maybe like 20,000 people a month. So
I know it in millions.
It's like 2.3
I'm
million. 2
actually
million a year.
trying to look it up right now.
During Obama and Trump, it hovered around 500,000, and now it's like between 2 and 2.5. Yeah. It's a lot.
It's a considerable amount. So it's a much more. I kind of knew that. I mean, I got the specifics, but I also kind of vaguely knew that. The bit that surprised me was the composition of it, because I had a very similar question to you, Jen, which was who all's coming through. When I was a kid, the stereotype was it's Mexicans that want to come either pick fruit that Americans don't want to pick or steal our fruit picking jobs, depending on your political orientation. Yeah. It was Mexicans. That is not the case. The Mexicans are maybe a quarter, I want to say, of the people that are caught right now. They're definitely less than half. Or let me phrase it. Previously, the last 10 years, it was Mexicans, and I believe it's called the Golden Triangle. Northern Triangle of like Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. And that was kind of the big amount. That's now about half. All of those countries that I just said, that's about half when you look at those. The other half are from the Caribbean, but there's a significant amount of others. Like last year, there
Venezuelans.
were Venezuela's a huge one. That's probably a really big one. But also there are it does seem to be a kind of global phenomenon. They again, ballpark figure, intercepted 24,000 Chinese nationals last year. Which is a lot. I mean, that's like, I would assume 5 or 6, but 24,000 is a lot. So it is a very, very diverse amount of people that are coming through, and in much, much greater numbers.
To give you a example of what we saw yesterday, so we went to Catholic Charities, which is one of the non-governmental organizations that once you're processed for asylum, you're only held for as long as it takes to process you, and then you are directed to one of these NGOs. Catholic Charities is one of the biggest ones in McAllen, and they will take care of you for 24 to 48 hours as you figure out, and then they'll provide assistance for where you're going to go next, basically. The majority of the 160 people that were there when we went and toured the facility and very briefly volunteered was Haitians. They were majority Haitians. But in general, that has been the biggest push most recently.
Okay, so they're coming from places where their economies are crushed.
Well, see, I think that's in answer to your other question, Jen, of are they asylum seekers or not. From the people I heard from, but it corroborates with my own assessment that like 90% of the people that are coming over because they want to make more money, make a better life, all that stuff, right? So it's predominantly economically driven in all of these cases. Or not in all of it, in the vast majority of the cases. The reason that the asylum thing comes up is that becomes a more advantageous position to take if you were intercepted.
Yeah.
So if and this is something I learned that one of the big flashpoints policy-wise was that Trump instituted the Migrant Chain Protection Act. I can't remember.
Remain in Mexico.
So basically, you come to the American border, you're intercepted, and you say, "Hey, I'm going to be killed by MI6." Very likely, you have a very legitimate reason for being no.
MI6 is the British.
That's Andrew Heaton. I have to worry about MI6. Sorry,
James Bond is after me. Fucking Blofeld's at the border.
Yeah, that's me. Let me in. The British are coming. No, MS-13. I'm gonna be murdered by somebody, or alternately, whatever the situation is. I'm claiming asylum. Under Trump, they would go, okay, you're claiming asylum. We will put your name on the list and go back to Mexico, and we will call you when your name comes before a judge at some indeterminate period in the future. Biden has flipped that to where you are processed in America and then released into America under your own recognizance, and then you are typically given a court date. And this is corroborated by my friend Anna, who's an immigration attorney, usually around 2027, sometimes as high as 2030.
That's so insane.
Yeah.
That's so insane.
There was an Atlantic article that came out while we were out there. Their stat was 4.5 years. That was met with skepticism by some of the folks that follow and track that 4.5 might be optimistic.
But think about that. All you have to do is claim asylum, whether it's true or not, and you get a 4.5-year visa to just be fancy free in the United States. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Yes, agreed. I mean, if you are truly in a impoverished, and I think based on everything we saw at the Catholic Charities and people we spoke to, I gather that anybody that makes it to the American border has gone through a fairly harrowing process. And so
there
were
like
some
very
horrible stories that we heard.
Yeah.
So one would assume that to put yourself through very dangerous conditions, you are fleeing at the very least abject poverty in your hometown, if not, an immediate threat to you. So yeah, you get to the American border and you were intercepted. You claim asylum and you were released into America for some period of time. It is preferable. However, we should clarify that doesn't mean you automatically get to work here, nor does it mean that your status is in any way confirmed. So for those people that are coming over here, they might get a work permit. Like maybe if the stars align in 3 months, more likely they'll get a work permit in a year, or they won't get a work permit at all. And then they're here for 4 years, and then there's
we pay for them for 4 years, essentially.
Yeah,
because we're not letting them work.
There was an argument that from a border patrol, a recently retired border patrol chief, who said that you can make a very credible argument that we are paying at 3 different points in the chain for each person that crosses that claims asylum.
My big takeaway, which might have been puppeteered by the Kochs, but I already kind of thought this, I'm just better at articulating it, are one, something that we've previously discussed on this program, is just the bottleneck and logistic phenomenon is a real issue there. We absolutely do need to be significantly increasing the amount of judges. I know this is something you've talked about, Jen. One of the, I don't even know who to hate.
And the reason I talk about it is because this is what people are saying to Congress over and over and over again. Yeah. They're aware.
Right. That is one thing Congress could do to help it. The other thing is that I like something that Congress could really do to make this situation easier is make it easier to legally immigrate here or get a temporary work visa. So one of the guys that I was really charmed by was the guy that had worked at the circus for 20 years. And he ended up he became the ringleader, and then he became a talent scout. But I can't wait for this episode to come out because I start talking about immigration.
Are you going to leave us for the circus? Is that where this is headed?
Like at one point I was like, so it's like a big family. It's like a big family. It's so much fun. And I was like, I see you got a wedding ring. Did you marry a circus lady? And he's like, circus relationships are more seasonal. You know that you're having fun. And I was like, this sounds amazing. This is like, I'm shacking up with a trapeze artist. We all know I'm leaving in May. Great. No, he was phenomenal. But he would do all the scout work where he'd go to Colombia and he'd get the trapeze people. Apparently they tend to come from Colombia, as opposed to contortionists tend to come from Mongolia. So he'd have to basically outsource talent for the circus because this is something I learned. Circus folk tend to be in families. Like there's not like a trapeze school in Dearborn, Michigan. So
it's in Florida, which I know for a fact because I lived with a trapeze.
He had to start getting them. And his position, which I agree with, was basically like, look, there's a ton of people that want to come to the United States. They don't want to move here. They want to make more money. They want to be here temporarily. And we make it very, very difficult for them to legally do it, and we make it very, very difficult for employers to hire them. And the benefit to broadening and lubricating that process would be, instead of getting a whole family that's coming over trying to seek asylum or claiming asylum once they come over, and then being here for an indefinite period of time, having their kids in our public schools and taking up those resources, particularly in places like El Paso that may not have the capacity to have that many people, if you were to just make it, if Congress were to make it easier for legal immigration to happen, you'd have a lot more dudes that come over for 6 months and work a lot and work overtime and then go back home, and you wouldn't have as much of a strain on the social structures in the country.
And there are guarantees and protections for people that are working legally that do not exist.
Plus, they pay taxes.
Incentivizing people to work
like you
illegally.
Our society gets people stuff. Like first of all, like they are aiding our society, whatever job they do, whether it's working in a kitchen or farming or whatever, like they're helping our society, and they pay income taxes. And to have these people here for 5 years and not let them work, forcing them in order to live to be sucking on the teat of our already pretty sad welfare system, like this just seems like a fiscally stupid thing to do.
The biggest thing that I took away is that we do need to talk about border security and immigration as two complementary but indeed separate problems.
Yeah.
There are, you could lock down the border and we still wouldn't have a great immigration program. We could have a great immigration program and we would still have problems at the border, because there are bad actors at the border, and there was a lot of talk about the cartels, the fact that human trafficking, smuggling specifically, so get away from the Q stuff for a second, but more just paying somebody from another country saying, all right, I'm going to pay this guy to get me into the United States and tell me the way to do it so I don't get extorted or raped or murdered on the way, a thing that happens all the time when people are making their way to the U.S., that is now more profitable than drugs. So you are part of the reason why you are exploiting. So the Border Patrol chief, take this for whatever it's worth. I asked him, how media responsive are, like, the argument for Biden being at fault for the problems at the border now are that remain in Mexico and his pledge to not deport anybody for the first 100 days of his presidency was a signal for people to come. And I asked him, like, all right, that would require that the rest of the world, and specifically some of these cartels, if this is what you're saying is driving this traffic, are very media responsive. They are very dialed into what is happening. And his point of view was, yes, they are. The more that we are fighting about this, the more that we are going back and forth, and we are making border security something more than just a thing, a routine piece of maintenance that needs to happen, that we are pointing fingers on a broken asylum system that nobody thinks is working correctly. Because that's the thing. The bar for asylum is extraordinarily high. One of the examples that we were given, which I think is compelling, is if there was a woman who came to America, claimed asylum, said MS-13, not MI6 or MS Paint, but MS-13.
My other foe.
Yeah.
Clippy.
MS-13 is like the Mexican cartel.
No, they are El Salvadorian originally. MS-13, yes, but the Central American gang.
Okay.
Yeah. They come to this woman's village and said, we demand a bribe. And she paid them. Then they came back and said, nah, we think you have more money. We want more money. In fact, you have 60 days to get us this ridiculous amount of money, or we're going to kill you and we're going to kill your daughter. And so she said, screw it, I'm going to America.
Yeah.
Goes to America, claims asylum. Under our laws, she does not have a claim for asylum.
Yeah.
Because it was just bribery.
Because it
was
needs
just
to be,
straight
for asylum to apply, you need to be a targeted ethnicity or religion. So if she had been Jewish and, you know, or she'd been a religious minority or she'd been an ethnic minority, it would have applied. But when it's you personally, like Rebecca, they're going to come kill you. That's not asylum.
And
status.
this was a horrifying story.
Yeah.
That got
seems
even
crazy.
worse. Yeah, so like the fact that we have the amount of asylum backlog that we have, these claims will almost assuredly be denied.
Yeah.
The reason why this is happening, according to the Border Patrol folks, is because it's a broken system. Because you are able to get in for 4.5 years, and that is part of the pull. That is part of what the trafficking rings are telling to people that want to be out of bad situations.
It makes perfect sense.
This is a thing to do.
Like, I wanted to go to Europe for a while, and there was no legal pathway for me to do it. If I could just go there and be like, hey, I need to claim asylum, and wouldn't have to prove it for 4.5 years, I'd probably be done with Europe by then anyway. Like, it seems like just a really easy thing to do.
We also would need enforcement issues. Like, part of the other reason why this is going to be a problem for years is that we also currently don't have strong deterrence if you refuse to show up or we can't find you.
That's true, but from what I've seen in the hearings, the vast majority of people actually do show up.
I think
kind of surprising, but
yeah, I mean, now
I don't know those numbers, but that would not surprise me because I think the vast majority of people that come to the United States want to work very hard and improve their lives and want to plug into the system. Anna, who I mentioned earlier, does pro bono work for the American Bar Association. And a significant amount of the questions she's been getting lately are from people that have got asylum status, or they've not obtained asylum status, but they're waiting for their trial for asylum. And so they go on and go, all right, I'm here. I was told to show up in court in 3 years. How do I get a work permit? And she tells them, you don't. That's not part of this process. But they want to. They're like, I'm here and I want to do this correctly, and I'm a guest in your country. I think the vast majority of people, I think, are in that camp, which is why when we get to solutions here in a minute, a very big portion of this, to me, is figuring out how to get those folks, which is the majority of them, the ability to work here legally and plug into the system and pay taxes and not force everybody into operating in the shadows.
That makes perfect sense to me.
All right, where do you want to go next?
Well, you know what? Let's get into solutions. So you've already given one, and this one makes so much sense to me, Andrew. I don't even think we have to go too much.
We mentioned judges. I think that's a big part of it, is figuring out how to deal with the backlog. In terms of the legal amount, this is the metaphor that keeps popping up to me. Let's say that Congress passed a law that every car in America cannot exceed 17 miles an hour under any situation, and we had a lot of speeding. And some people are driving 102 miles an hour, and that's reckless, and they shouldn't be doing that. But most people are driving like 45, 60. I would go, we've made it too difficult for people to get from point A to point B, and if we just raise the speed limit, that will allow border security to focus on the dipshits that are driving 95 miles an hour. I would expand very much. I would expand and lubricate how to make how to get people into the country. This is me personally, and this is not something that was really at any point came up on the trip. And in fact, the border security chief that we spoke to was kindly unreceptive to my viewpoint on this. I think we need to end the war on drugs, because that is what is making the drug traffic so incredibly profitable. And if we were to treat it as a medical problem in this country rather than a criminal problem, the profit incentive would go down, and you'd see that the crazy amount of rapacious gangs that are all the way up and down that corridor would decline. So that for me is a part of the process. I think that we need to get better at figuring out how to logistically do this, in that I think the folks in El Paso and McAllen and other places like that have a very legitimate position when they say El Paso has 120,000 people here. We've received 200,000 people in the last year. We do not have the local resource. Even if you give us money, we don't have the infrastructure for this. So what I think needs to happen is we either need to have whatever relevant federal department it would be, go, okay, we are going to develop a bus system and figure out how to get people around the country more so that we can distribute the amount of people coming in so we don't strain any particular net, or we get more local in terms of work visas, where we not only make it more legal and easy to do, but we maybe have some amount of delegation to individual states, where Massachusetts can say, we will take X amount, and that way we're sending people there. So I think part of that is making sure we don't just get a glut of people that are straining resources at the bottom. And then on my end, and this is shooting from the hip here, I would like to see a little bit more out-of-the-box thinking on this, in that I'm just a guy. I don't make enough money to have a house. But if I had a house and I had an accessory dwelling unit, I don't know, I'd be okay with sponsoring somebody to cook part-time for me and give them free lodging. That I wouldn't feel like that would be exploitative, and I'd get meals and they'd get a house and they could work, they could do other stuff too. I think there might be ways to get, I think that there's plenty of people that would be happy to work with immigrants coming in, or even just let them stay there for free if they had the opportunity to do it. And at the moment, I don't see a lot of opportunity for individuals to integrate into the system on our end to provide help beyond just giving money to charity.
I would say the biggest thing that is harmful is grafting, the grafting of racial politics onto what I think is a very logistical issue. If we are only going to look at Border Patrol and ICE to do the job that they are hired and recruited to do, Border Patrol is not there to process asylum claims. Yeah. They have to do it if people are looking for them to do it. But that is not their job. That is not what they are best at. They are actively not doing what we pay them to do, which would be to interdict, actual human traffickers and drug smugglers, of which still exist. Instead, we don't have that. And part of it is because since 2016, although you could probably track this back to 1992 at the earliest, and then past that, any conversation at the border has become a Rorschach test for, are you racist? And that's very harmful. I don't think it's good for the migrants that are coming in here. I think that it incentivizes some of the worst elements of our global humanity to create these, we were hearing stories from Darion's Gap, which is how you get into Central America. And it is basically, I forget who was saying this. It's like if Mordor from Lord of the Rings were Narcos, like it is just the worst of the worst of human trafficking, rape, murder. This is not a controversial statement to say that this is a bad place. And we are right now in our modern system incentivizing people to go through and make deals with these cartels and with these traffickers that are putting them on buses and extorting them. I will never forget the 1,000-yard stares that I saw in Catholic Charities of these people that had gotten to the end of a harrowing journey that if I knew Creole or Spanish, thankfully there were a few people that did know Spanish that were talking to them, these stories are skin peeling. I think in general, Jen, you not going is probably fine because most of the speakers, I imagine Jen just writing down numbers and then Google it, next to it throughout the various stuff. The thing that I was very, very grateful I was able to do is just, this is a human cost, a real human cost that is happening. And largely it is being discussed in what I find to be an infantile way of like, well, if you talk about border security, it's because you secretly hate immigrants or X, Y, and Z. And I don't think it's helpful on any side of the spectrum. I don't think that the great replacement talk is particularly helpful. I don't think that smearing anybody who thinks that we have a broken system right now as a racist is particularly helpful. I think that we do need to listen to folks like Clem. I did find him to be compelling. That
Who's Clem?
This retired Yuma district border chief. And his point of view was like, look, we do not need a wall 100% of the border. That is stupid. Where you need walls are
urban environments.
Yeah. Specifically, he's like, sometimes double wall because you're not going to stop anybody, but you can slow them down. You need walls in certain areas. McAllen was a great example. I think it was helpful to be down there and see that McAllen is a tremendous trade port. Like that town is a very middle class town. They had an Orange Theory that was booked out for the 5 o'clock class, which means there's enough people that have enough money for Orange Theory and they wake up really early because they have jobs to get to.
Whole city of morning people in hot weather.
So like, and that very clearly is aided by the wall in that it directs what is at times a very chaotic immigration port away from what is a very busy economic hub, because Mexico is our largest trade partner right now. It just passed China last year. So he's like, where it works, let's make it work. Listen to the people that actually patrol the border. And then beyond that, he was not specifically prescriptive on, I think he very much thought that disbanding Remain in Mexico was a mistake. Pledging openly to not deport anybody for 100 days was a mistake. That was a poll. But he was very open to specifically diplomatic work, like using carrot and stick from the State Department level with Mexico to help with this, as opposed to just leaving it all to Border Patrol. When he described at times he would go and talk to his Mexican counterparts, and because he knew that they were getting their ass chewed out by people in Mexico City, they were very helpful. And when there was no pressure from Mexico City, they were like, what are we going to do? We'll do some joint patrols. Other than that, there ain't a whole lot we can do. So I do think that taking this seriously on a level beyond name calling and specifically racial politics would be my immediate proposed solution, because I think that it is poisonous to a process right now that has true and horrific human cost.
I also struggled to figure out who the actual political divisions were in the fuckwittery, because there's a lot of fuckwittery involved in this process, and it was difficult for me to ascertain, like, is it just red versus blue? That doesn't seem to be it. My circus folk friend Jim, who's been advocating for expanding legal immigration, he views it as centrists versus the edges. So when he talks to Republican and Democratic members of Congress that he views as sympathetic to expanding immigration, they tend to be the moderates, and they tend to be more towards the center. And when he talks to deep red Republicans, they tend to take the position that these are stealing American jobs, or they are going to somehow infect America with foreign ideals. And when he talks to deep blue progressive members of Congress, they don't like the idea of having any type of visa stuck on sponsorship, because that's a form of slavery. And so from his perspective, again, he's trying to get the center to fight the edges. And I struggled to figure out who the actual sides were. Like, Obama attempted comprehensive immigration reform with DACA and Dreamers, which he was right to do, and I supported. President Bush, prior to him, supported immigration reform. And there's a lot of malicious people. And then, like, I really try not to do this on my program and on this program in general, of like getting into like malicious projection on groups, but I am beginning to get a kind of bootleggers and Baptists feel to the current immigration system. I think that there are people that truly believe that immigrants are dangerous and destructive and shouldn't be let into the country. And I think that there's also a lot of people that are in positions of power, particularly within the private sector, that benefit from having a fucked up system that allows them to suppress competitors that follow the rules while having off the books labor for themselves. And so there's a lot of malice to go around.
So I'm working on an episode for Congressional Dish. It'll probably be out sometime in March. But I have been in the process of reading H.R. 2, which is the Republican, when the Republicans are saying this is what we want, I wanted to read, like, if you could get your dream bill, what would it be? And the one thing that really stuck with me, and of course I'll give you the actual details in Congressional Dish, but big picture, they want the policy to basically be, when you get to the United States, it's going to be so hard for you to make a living here that you won't even want to come.
God.
So as opposed to the idea that you and I have agreed on, I think all three of us have agreed on, like, if you're going to have these people in the country, they should be able to work, they should be able to pay taxes and be a part of our society while they're here.
These are which people?
The immigrants.
Like legal asylum, illegal, like...
Right now we're talking asylum seekers.
Okay, asylum seekers.
Yeah.
Okay.
But those people are here legally, and that's how people are getting it, because they're claiming asylum. We know that a lot of those claims are not going to be valid, but because they have so much time here in the interim, the Republican plan is to make it basically illegal for them to work for 6 months. So we'd have to pay for them. Or
they turn to crime.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You're not just going to come here and die.
When you deprive, I believe under current U.S. law, or at least in some states, when you leave prison, you were ineligible for food stamps. Great call.
Yeah.
Great call. Yep. You can't get a job. You can't get food stamps. What would you do? I think I'd fuck up a liquor store.
When you treat people like wild animals, at the end of the day, we are and will behave that way to survive.
I think those Republican concerns, I think, are wildly unfounded in terms of where I will give them credit is, let me just say, people that are in favor of immigration restriction, because there are groups within the progressive movement that likewise toe this line. I think from a very basic economic position, I understand the premise of, look, if you have a greater supply of labor, it's going to suppress wages. I get that. There's some value to that. The way we have the law set up in the United States right now, not if they're doing it legally. So with H-2A, I'm gonna fuck up my numerals
H-2B.
here. With agricultural visas for migrant labor, or for seasonal workers that are going to carnivals or working at fisheries in Alaska, things like that. In both of those instances, one, the employer cannot hire that person over an American. So if an American goes and says, I want to do this job, they are required by law to hire the American. And in fact, they're required to post the job in various...
They are not allowed to ask them any interview questions. You are allowed to ask them, did you read the contract? And can you fulfill the terms of the contract? And then if an American wants the job, they get it if they answer yes to those two questions.
Yeah, and then in agriculture, they're required to provide housing for all of the foreign workers that come in, which adds to the expense, which makes it less likely that they're going to hire them over an American that's doing their own housing. And they are also legally required to pay the federal and state mandated prevailing wage for the given industry. So in agriculture, the national average is around $15 an hour for foreign workers that are coming in. If I'm legally hiring a fruit picker, I have to pay them about $15. It varies from state to state. In Oklahoma, it might be $14.72. In California, it might be $15.80, but it's around $14 to $15 an hour. So I literally legally cannot pay them less than that. I cannot undercut the market. So the concerns that you're going to have all these people coming in taking American jobs under the current regime, I think is very unfounded. Now, to get back to our earlier point, I do think that prevailing wage is set too high. I would reduce that wage largely because I do not think price controls work in labor or anything else.
See? But snowed over by the greedy peach lobby.
Because
big peach. Peach farmer came in and filled your head with
listeners will recall, a staunch minimum wage advocate, Andrew Heaton, who has always been in favor of price controls, reversed his position.
By the way, Barbara Lee is running for Senate in California, proposed a $50 minumum wage this week.
Yeah,
nice.
She shouldn't have done that.
Nice.
Even I was like, whoa.
While I would change that, I do think that's too high. Under current American law right now, it is double minimum wage, and you have to hire Americans. So like the likelihood that any of those jobs are going to displace Americans is vanishingly low. When you look at like Oregon, I think they had like 43 people in certain job fields that were Americans actually apply, and that seems to be the case. So I don't think
the Peach Man said that he's only had, for the last 5 years, the same 3 Americans have come back and done the season.
Yeah, Peach Farmer we spoke to.
Yeah.
Although he has a ton of repeats that come in from other countries because they
in terms of Americans. Like it used to be 10, and then it was 7, and then it was 5, and now it's just the same 3 dudes that come
well,
back.
and like this is one of the things that I do think is really helpful in looking at the immigration policy. Justin, I think you're very right in separating border from immigration. These are complementary but separate issues. When we're talking about immigration, the number one question I have for people is, do you want more or less legal immigration? If you want more legal immigration, we're on the same team, and it's up to us to figure out how to get there. If you want less legal immigration, and it sounds like that's the Republican bill you're describing, Jen, you just don't want more immigrants coming into the country. That's a very different scenario. And
I've found, if I had to summarize what I'm seeing in this bill, the cruelty is the point.
Yeah.
It's and I don't think that's very helpful either.
No.
I think that we have to see these people as human beings, and there's a lack of that with some people in this Congress. And so I think that's why if you see Team Blue, their spidey sense going up when people talk about the border, it's because if they're actually reading these bills and they know the policies being proposed, there is a cruelty to this issue with the way it's being presented by some on the right. Like,
sure.
And
there are xenophobes and bigots there too, yeah.
If we want to look at the politics of it, the people that were in the Senate trying to work out an actual solution were Kristen Sinema, independent, James Langford, who is as right-wing as he gets. Like, there's sometimes that the stuff that comes out of his mouth has shocked me, especially when he was in the House of Representatives, but he sat down at that table and I think had a very good faith effort. So there are people that are operating in good faith. There are also people who are trying to be cruel. So the politics, of course, is the main problem here, because as we have sat here, I think there's some broad agreement on what would help. But unfortunately, we have people in power right now that there's a wide spectrum.
And if I were to describe an overarching theme of the last 48 hours, it is that there needs to be more voices that are having more reasoned dialogue about this, because there was no specific political prescription that we were told during that. And if anything, that tended to be from the immigration side, from the border side, from everybody that was sponsored to talk. The ending note that we were told to leave on is, we need to have a different kind of conversation about this, because the one that we are having right now is divisive and has real harm and real consequences. Take your pick. It is a buffet throughout the entire political spectrum of problems that this is causing.
Divisive and factless. Because I know that we've now been talking about this for the better part of a month, and all 3 of us have independently researched it. You guys went to the border, and I feel like I have learned so much in the last month. I know you guys have too. So the conversation in the nation is not about what's actually happening there. I feel like the national conversation is about this like fantasy of an invasion, and it's just like there's a lot of nonsense.
Well, the right-wing thing with the invasion is the same reason why I hate the Democrats calling January 6th and insurrection.
Yeah.
They're using a term so they can trigger things that legally are...
Well, and so, I was about legally. So Greg Abbott can,
Yes.
under constitutional proviso,
Exactly.
claim that...
And so
he
it's
is-
Put
like-
razor wire in the water.
We
Like,
saw the razor
cruelty
wire.
is the point.
We saw the razor wire.
That's so awful.
Yeah, the two, like, I talked to my dad like years ago, and he hit a point like there's a good reason to be in favor of something, and there's a bad reason to be in favor of something. Or you could say there's a good reason and a dumb reason to be in favor of something. And like in this instance, the problem that I see with the Republicans are there are Republicans that want to expand the legal amount, and they want to crack down on the illegal amount, which I think is a respectable position. There are other Republicans that just don't like immigrants but can't say it out loud, and those people suck. And then on the Democratic team, like the part that further exacerbates this issue, when we were driving around yesterday, we saw the Trump wall, and right next to it is the George W. Bush wall that was voted on by then Senators Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton. And you can look and go, well, that wall, not racist. That wall, racist. And then you can see the bit that Biden built, and you're like, not racist. And it's like, okay, that was not a that wall conversation was not a helpful conversation. So I think the people that are just anti-immigrant and don't want to say it out loud because they want to get, they, for whatever reason, they want to claim, but they just really don't like immigrants. And then the other people that are overly racializing the issue.
Well, let's be more specific. I think one of the people that we're alluding to is Donald Trump. Because one of the reasons this has taken such a racial overtone and why the spidey sense goes up is he said stuff like these immigrants they're rapists, some are good people, but he's the one who's portraying them as horrible human beings and not desperate people from desperate situations who deserve some kind of peace in their lives.
I can understand, and look, there's no doubt that Donald Trump, like Pat Buchanan, was the animating straw that stirred the drink, like Buchanan did in 92 and Trump did in 2016. But we're a long way from 2016 at this point. Although the reaction to, I think Biden, I came away from this believing that what Biden did on day one of his presidency was tremendously unhelpful.
Yeah.
And that is something that he does not need legislation to reverse some of the things that he went on day one, that he ran on, that was a campaign promise to people. And I don't believe that good-hearted people who were led to believe that Donald Trump, the evil demagogue, racist man, needs to the correction to that would be to claim not or to pledge not to deport people and to take away a program that seemed fairly effective in Remain in Mexico.
And then to right now ignore the issue completely because it's a right-wing issue.
Exactly.
Like, let me say this about the spidey sense, especially when it comes to Donald Trump. We need to tamp down the spidey sense a little bit. Just because he says racist shit doesn't mean that the policy is
so
not.
it doesn't mean that there's not a problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, again, every day that we give ammunition to human traffickers that are extorting, raping, and murdering people on the way here is bad.
Yeah.
Like, again, imagine you just went through the worst thing in your life and you have this 1,000-yard stare, you're holding on to your child, then me and Brian Brushwood try to give you a sandwich. Like, this is a horrifying situation that these people are going through. Like, it is, it's real. It's real. And it's not just, let's put a sign outside on my lawn that says no human is illegal. Like,
I think
got it done. That shows Orange Man. Like, yes, think what you will about Donald Trump. Please vote exactly what you want and keep him out of office, keep him in office, whatever. That is your opinion. And you should campaign on this in the way that you think is most effective. But when it comes to actually solving this problem, taking away Remain in Mexico was, I think, a massive, massive detriment.
So you mentioned earlier, Justin, and this is a point that's worth returning to, that we should look at immigration and border security as separate issues. And I think you could say that Biden's actions on the border have induced a greater amount of people coming in. I think the data is pretty good on that. To flip it around, though, Jen, you're absolutely right about Donald Trump. And I say that in that dropping the rhetorical stuff and just vote. Like, I am more concerned about governance than I am rhetoric, and I'm even now I think I'm overly concerned with rhetoric because I'm a fairly like touchy-feely moderate that doesn't like ruffling feathers. But when you look at the Trump administration in terms of immigration, not looking at the rhetoric, looking at the actual directives the president gave the executive branch, they didn't want more immigrants coming in. everybody involved in immigration law will tell you that it was much harder to get legal immigration status within the Trump administration than it was for his predecessor or under Obama. Why? Because they wanted less immigrants. So that question that I asked earlier, do you want more or less legal immigrants? Yeah. The Trump administration demonstrably wanted fewer legal immigrants. They are an anti-immigrant group.
Yep.
There we go. Anything else?
Did you guys enjoy the trip?
Yeah, had a great time.
It was nice.
It was really fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
McAllen's a nice town.
Also,
I did the 7:30 Orange Theory. So
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
I
got it in.
So I went to the gym. I brought gym clothes. I exercised in the gym twice. And the first night, leaving the gym, I saw in the hall, I saw a couple of guys out behind a glass door sitting down, and I was like, oh, maybe they have a sauna. So I walked outside. I was just outside. And I was like, is there a sauna? And kind of cocky guy that works there is like, there's not a sauna, but there's a pool that you can jump in. And I was like, haha, lizard people of Texas aren't going to see this coming. So I jumped in, and they were like, whoa, he's swimming in February. And I'm like, it's 67 degrees. This is very doable.
Oh, you swam outside?
Yeah, last night and the night before. Because it's about the same as Barton Springs, but I look like some kind of superhuman. Because they're all.
Were you doing laps, or were you in there with a floaty and a cocktail? What were you doing in the pool?
I was doing laps. I was walking around going, and then I started doing laps. And then eventually I transitioned over to that. But the most fun part, honestly, was just the fact that I got to do a field trip with my friends. Yeah. We had 6 of us that were part of the. This was official Heatonverse. This was the name of our delegation, according to the AFP Foundation. I wanted to get T-shirts made, the Heatonverse. So it was super fun hanging out with everybody. Made a few new friends and got some good content out of it. I think it'll be a fun episode. I look forward to hearing your episode, Justin, if at the very least to make sure that I don't accidentally reproduce it. And also, I was fucking thrilled to talk to the circus guy. I was beaming because I was just like, he had a really good point at lunch.
He looked like Wilford Brimley.
He looked like Wilford Brimley.
Did he have diabetes?
Probably.
It looked like he might. He might. The mustache, at least.
We didn't talk about circus diets, but my guess is they're pretty similar to carny diets. Different, by the way, because he called me out on this. At one point, I was like, so carnies, and he stops. He's like, carnies are different than circus people. And I was like, ooh, there's a taxonomy here. That's a very Heaton-esque thing to do, to go, we're going to talk about seasonal visas from the perspective of a circus ringleader. Could not be more Heaton in terms of show content. So I was very happy with
He
the whole
was
thing.
by far the most activist of the questioners.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire trip.
Yeah.
He was very, very pointed and direct about his point of view on stuff like that.
Love it. I'm glad you guys had a good time. I'll consider it next time.
Next time. Patreon.com/wherenotwrong is where you need to go if you want to support this program. You get a bonus episode each and every week. And this week we are talking about male and female brains and whether or not they are different. Yes, according to a new Stanford University study. We will go into all of that. Patreon.com/wherenotwrong. A judge ordered former President Trump to fork over $355 million of his fortune, plus interest, finding that he lied for years about his wealth on financial statements he used to secure loans and make deals as he built his real estate empire. The ruling, after a 2.5-month trial in New York Attorney General's Letitia James lawsuit, cuts to the core of Trump's image as a wealthy, shrewd real estate mogul turned political force. The financial penalty, staggering for a businessman who's seen casinos, an airline, and other ventures fail, adds to Trump's mounting legal debts and could put the Republican presidential frontrunner in a serious cash crunch as he campaigns to retake the White House. Trump, who's also dealing with 4 criminal cases, decried Friday's ruling as election interference and vowed to appeal. Just to give you a sense of one of the biggest points that the judge took with Donald Trump's assessment of his own property, Trump told a bank in 2018 that Mar-a-Lago was worth $739 million. That is the same amount as the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world.
How good are its golf?
Now,
I have another detail, too.
Okay, well, here we go.
His Manhattan apartment, he said, was approximately 30,000 square feet. Said this in multiple loan applications. It's only 10,000. You can fucking measure this.
Yeah.
And someone finally did.
Can you, hold on, can you measure A room. How can one even do that? It's about feeling how big the room is.
Now, critics...
It's the biggest room.
Yeah.
Critics have said that the near $400 million judgment for which Donald Trump will have to pay a portion of to even appeal is a crime without victims, since the banks that secured the loans said that everything was repaid and that they would do business with Trump again. Jen, is it?
So I'm not one to shed tears for bankers, but there are other people that do business at banks. Like, I know the Federal Reserve can just make money appear out of nowhere, but banks can't do that. And so every loan that they were giving to Donald Trump above valuation that he actually deserved was a loan that didn't go to somebody else. It didn't go to a small business person or anybody else. Like, he gamed the system. The man is a con man. He's always been a con man. We've known this. Now it's proven. And in just stupid ways. Like, the measurements of the apartment is just the perfect example of just how blatant his lies were. So even though and also the bankers, they know damn well that this man might be president of the United States again and that he holds grudges. It would be the dumbest thing in the world for them to say we wouldn't give a loan to Donald Trump in this moment in time. So even if they are pissed about it, even if they are the victims, they're not going to fucking say it because they don't want to piss off the president of the United States. So I don't think it's a victimless crime. I think that he stole. He stole. And if any of us did it, we would get in trouble. So he just did it on a much bigger scale. And in this country, we tend to think that white collar crime shouldn't be punished for some reason.
I mean, he did pay it back. That is an important, he paid the money back.
But he is in trouble here for ill-gotten gains, is what they're saying here, is that he got loans that are vastly larger than he would have with much lower interest rates, because the qualifications that were used for those loans said that he had a lot more money and he was less of a risk than he actually was. I mean, we know that back in, I want to say like the 80s, 90s. I don't know. My Trump timeline is not perfect here. But there was a time in which the banks were going to foreclose on him. I mean, he was a risk. And the only reason they didn't is because of the Trump brand. They saw something in the brand and they basically bailed him out of his bad debts. So this guy has been bad with money for a very long time. And I do think there's validity to the argument that if he had never gotten into politics, this lawsuit never would have happened. He probably would have gotten away with it because, again, we're in America and white-collar crime is just everywhere and rampant and very rarely prosecuted. But it is what it is. They found clear evidence of everything that he was convicted of. And,
Heaton? Do you similarly echo he?
No, I'm split down the middle on this.
You Trump lover.
Yeah, I very much, renowned up until last weekend Trump supporters / increase the minimum wage to $50 an hour, Andrew Heaton. Point taken on all of the Trump being a con man, 100% yes. The two parts of this that concern, I'll start with the part that doesn't concern me, is the victimless crime bit. And I'm on the record on this show saying that I'm against victimless crimes being prosecuted, and generally I am. But when I talk about that, I'm usually talking about one person doing something in their life that doesn't affect somebody else.
Like smoking weed.
Or for that matter, doing heroin. I want the government to be involved insofar as it's regulating or providing medical treatment. I want it a lot less focused on the criminal element of what somebody's doing that doesn't directly harm somebody else. In this instance, a lot of people were really, really freaked out that Trump's business licenses were all suspended in New York for a period of 3 years. I read one article that likened it to the corporate death penalty. I was not struck that way. My interpretation of that, insofar as victimless crimes, goes like this.
That is in the state of New York.
Just in the state of New York.
Yeah.
Still a big deal because that's where the Trump empire is a ton of their real estate is.
But they weren't suspended. Him and his sons can't be executives of the company for 3 years.
Right.
The Trump organization is still very much there.
Yeah,
they did not get the corporate death penalty, and that was on the table.
Right, and yes, and so I think
they only got a $500 million fine.
Fuck them.
I'll get to that in a moment. I think the parallel with the temporary business license suspension is it's kind of akin to having a driver's license in the state of New York for running a business, and I would look at it from a victimless crime perspective, like drunk driving, where if you found a lot of video footage of me clearly getting drunk and like swerving on the road, and I never hit anybody, But I did it for a couple years, and the court called me and we're suspending your license. I couldn't go, but I didn't hit anybody. Like, nobody got hurt. You go, yes, but you're providing a clear and present danger to people based on your actions. Therefore, there's going to be a consequence. That consequence is your driver's license is going to be revoked. The same thing has happened for a period of 3 years. So that bit I actually think was correct. The two parts that give me pause about this is, one, I think this is very clearly prosecutorial selection, in that the prosecutor that did this case ran on prosecuting Donald Trump. Not for this, just in general. Just Trump's an evil guy and we're going to throw shit at him till it sticks. And that bothers me. The idea that someone's going to run based on targeting an individual and don't worry, we'll figure out how to do it later. That is a level of prosecutorial abuse that bothers me. And it does feel a touch like, oh, we're just going to like fine political people we don't like to death. Like, I think the Trump people have a bit of a legitimate position there.
But does the fact that he actually is a criminal tamp any of that down?
To go back to your earlier comment, I think the bit that would be concerning for me is, would this have happened if he weren't in politics? And I think that's a pretty clear no. I think that he is being focused on for prosecutorial focus because of his politics, which is disconcerting. In terms of the monetary damages, they seem excessive to me. I am out of my element in terms of this. I'm not a lawyer, as I previously said. The thing that I saw that would make sense for monetary damages are Trump, being a con man, would inflate or deflate the value of his Trump organization to whatever suited his ends. So 1 month, they will deflate how much the Trump organization is worth in order to avoid paying state taxes in New York. The next month, they will increase it in order to get favorable loans. Makes sense to me to make them pay back taxes on that. So like what I would do is go, okay, we're going to, for your purposes, it's always whatever the highest thing was. If you told the banks that's what you were at, that's what you were at for state tax purposes, and you owe a backlog plus interest of that.
But they also were able to acquire giant buildings. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars worth of assets here. So it's like, I know $500 million seems like an enormous amount of money to us, but with the amount of properties that they were able to acquire with these lies, the big numbers begets big numbers.
True, and Jen, I loved your point earlier. I really like this. Truly, that if it's a zero-sum game with bank loans, you are taking a bank loan from someone else. That's really good economic analysis that I like and hadn't occurred to me. The articles that I've read have hypothesized that this amounts to 11 to 13% of Trump's net worth. Now, that is according to what Trump claims his net worth is, which is probably considerably less, which means that this is probably higher than that. So it might be 20 to 30% of what his actual net worth is.
Which we say because he's a liar.
Because he's a liar. No one's disputing this. No, I guess this would be the real quick analogy I would do for the monetary damages on that. If you got hired on a job because you lied about your degree, you claimed you had a master's degree in a given field and you didn't, and you were committing an act of fraud, there would be legal repercussions for that, as there should be, and you would probably get fired or pay some kind of fine. But what you would unlikely do is pay back all of the money you earned until you were caught. Like if you were doing the job for 10 years, it's unlikely that you would have all of that money be given back. And that's the equivalent of what's happened.
I don't think that's the equivalent of what's happened.
Yeah?
No, I don't. Because, again, we're talking about a company that measured its income for decades in the billions of dollars. So again, like it is a big number.
Yeah,
but
they're billionaires. They don't have feelings.
Yeah,
it's not about feelings.
All right.
Well, it's not about feelings or rights. Like this is
eat the rich.
While I'm with you and being uncomfortable with the reason he was targeted, which is I think it's clearly political, and if anyone's arguing it's not, I think they're full of shit. However, I think bigger picture, the fact that white collar crime, it's this easy to do and get away with. Like, that is a bigger problem. Like, how many other people are doing the same exact thing and inflating their numbers and not paying their taxes and getting away with it, like, just on a systemic issue? I think this speaks to it. And I think it's really hard for us as normies to look at that number and have any kind of judgment at all because we don't know how much money he made off of this. And this judge did go into that and look at it. He's going to get appeals.
It is more than the Louisiana Purchase adjusted for inflation.
Well, he's been able to buy, but like he sold a building to the Waldorf Astoria. Like this guy has incredible property, giant towers in New York City.
Some would say the best.
Yeah.
So let me
these
concede
are
for a moment.
giant, expensive properties. So
I'll concede for a moment. Being a normie, I have no idea about the finances of this, nor do I know the law about the monetary damages. So I'll put a pin on that. You can take that one. The thing that I am worried about is the prosecutorial element of this. So thinking big picture, one, yes, if there are lots of white collar crimes, and I think white collar crimes are way worse in terms of the actual national damage done, because it's very smart people taking a fuck ton of money as opposed to somebody robbing a liquor store. So like they should be prosecuted. But I also think that when that happens, that should be done systematically, right? Like if we have a thing where we go, this is the law, but we're only going to occasionally enforce it against people we don't like. That's not really a law. That's an arbitrary measure. So absolutely, let's crack down on them systematically. But I want to go one step further, which is, the big picture to me is I do not want this to become a feature of American politics, and I don't think the Republicans are going to forget this. And I'm afraid that this is now going to become a thing where, whatever the next Obama equivalent is, ends up getting sued in Texas or Virginia or something, and it ends up becoming a way of weaponizing the political process by trying to knock people out economically through the court system. That's what scares me, is about the long-term implications of this.
I think it's harder to do if the guy you're doing it to is not a criminal. The fact that Trump was this stupid of a criminal does make this more possible. Bigger picture, I think the solution here, because what people are saying is like, well, it was a prosecutorial witch hunt. Trump shouldn't have been prosecuted. I don't think that's the answer here. I think the answer is he should have been prosecuted, and so should every single other bad businessman like him.
Sure. And they won't.
If it was consistent, no argument.
And the governor of New York made sure of that when she said on a podcast, "Don't worry, other businessmen. This has nothing to do with you."
So that's fucked up.
There are indeed two tiers of justice, one for Trump and one for everybody else. And this is Letitia James's hunt. And I largely agree with you, Heaton, but I will take the political side of it. I think it does material damage not only to anybody running against Biden, but I think the other cases that are going to be coming up against him, because I think it exactly portrays the narrative that he has said from the very beginning, that it's a get Trump operation. I think this was fairly nakedly a get Trump operation, and now he's going to use it to impugn not only the other case that he has coming up in New York City, which I think we have also agreed probably wouldn't be brought if he wasn't Donald Trump, but also the ones that I think people,
about?
The one with the 34
Stormy
indictments.
Daniels. Stormy Daniels. But then also
classified documents.
But then also, I think the ones that are more down the line that by polling people take more seriously, which is the January 6th case federally, and the Mar-a-Lago docks case, which may or may not wind up seeing trial before the election because of how that's progressing. But I think stuff like this, stuff like the absolute soap opera that erupted last week with Fani Willis in Fulton County, and the absolute mess that is that case right now in terms of public perception, this is exactly what Trump would want politically. Now, I don't think that he would want to pay $350 or $400 million for it. So it's hard to call it an in-kind donation, but I do believe it's the exact narrative.
I think politically you're absolutely right. Again, I think he's probably smarting from the receipt, but politically though, like many of the court dates that he did in New York were not required for him to physically be there, but he did it. And what he would do, because he's quite the showman, is he would come out of the courtroom and he would there was a barrier placed there for his protection, like a road barrier, a metal barrier with bars on it, for his protection from people coming in trying to storm the courtroom. But he'd come out and he'd address the scrum of reporters behind the metal bars of the barrier in front of the court door, and would talk about how this is a banana republic. And so the visual is all Trump behind bars. And again, he didn't need to be there, but he would. He'd skip going to Iowa, he'd skip going to New Hampshire in order to be able to craft the media narrative around this, which I think probably has helped him politically.
He's a con man.
No argument there.
Show.
No argument there.
And he's also going to be the president of the United States again if you keep building the narrative that none of this stuff is real.
But again, he got this fine because he's a criminal, because he did lie. He only
got prosecuted because he's Donald Trump. And I do think that lawfare is a problem. I think the DAs running to punish their political enemies.
Don't you think being a criminal is also a problem?
And I would love for attorney generals to run on only the law and not vote for me. I'm going to get the guy that you don't politically like.
So one of the things that happens in...
I think that hurts the institution.
Among Russian oligarchies...
But I think we knew this guy was a criminal, and as he ran for office, we found out more about it, and he got prosecuted. I think there was a reason that people were like, this guy should be prosecuted, because we learned so much that we didn't know before he got into politics. Before he got into politics... America knew that he fucked around on his first wife with Marla Maples. Like, that was like what Trump, he was this like, had gold stuff, and he was a sideshow. He was a game show host. And then it got serious. He was the one that invited all of this attention into his life because he ran for president.
His business stuff was out there in the streets.
Yeah, but that's not what he was famous for. He was famous for being this image of New York businessman with all the women, and he had that show, The Apprentice, that's what it was. He had that show, like there was an image of Donald Trump. And then we got into
studiously created.
That no one in America had any incentive to really give a shit about. No one really cared about his business records because he wasn't trying to rule the world. And then he decided he wanted to become the most powerful person in the world. We started looking into the documents, looking into his business practices. Yes. Yeah. Yes, he brought this attention upon himself. We looked into it. Oh my God.
Political enemies.
The guy is a criminal, and therefore he got prosecuted. Like, this attention is on him for a reason. He brought it upon himself.
He should have sat down and shut up.
He should have not
been quiet.
lied on his loans. He should have not been a criminal. And if he was a criminal, he should have just stuck to being a TV show host. But he decided to say, I am so respectable that you can trust me to be the most powerful person in the world. And we found out otherwise.
Decided to stand up for real Americans.
Justin.
Pain
in the ass.
I did not follow the Letitia James candidacy in New York, but
she's getting laid.
From what little?
No, that's funny.
From
how? Letitia,
you're racist.
There's just so many court cases. There are so many court cases with this criminal that I just can't keep them straight.
But from what little I've read, and correct the record here, Letitia James did not run saying Donald Trump has been fraudulent on real estate deals, and this has now come to light, and I'm going to make sure that's taken care of. She ran on, this guy's a criminal. We all know he's a criminal. I'll figure out how to put him behind bars. And that is like...
And people voted for that. And the reason is because people found out that he was a criminal when we actually started looking into his businesses, when it wasn't just on The Apprentice, and we went like, ooh, he's a good businessman.
Yeah, this makes me very uncomfortable. The idea of, look, we all know that guy's a shitbag, so let's elect somebody to prosecute him. I don't really care what you prosecute him on. I don't care what the law is he broke. Just figure something out, and then throw it at him to punish him. That bothers me. That feels like
it could be $150 FEC fine, which is what the Stormy Daniels thing is over. That's the punishment for it.
In like this, the controlling mechanism they have in Russia is if you're one of those oligarchs, you have to break the law. You 100% have to break the law. There's no way to run corporations legally. And the reason that they keep that system there is so that whenever the president wants to punish anybody that gets out of line, he can go, you broke the law. They're all breaking the law, but he can arbitrarily enforce the law as a punitive measure. That is what I'm concerned about. So if we want to increase the amount of prosecutors and consistently apply these laws in New York, great. I'm fine with that, but I want it to be consistent application. I don't want it to be arbitrary based on politics.
But I think the idea that Trump didn't deserve to be prosecuted is a incorrect one. Like, I understand being concerned about that, and I do share some of that, but Donald Trump did it. He's a criminal. He's a criminal, and on a giant scale. We're talking hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars worth. Like, this is a criminal that if you had stolen, like we talked the other day about, Oakland, like you're not prosecuting people for stealing like material things. He stole hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, that should be prosecuted. He is a criminal.
Well, he paid back the money.
It's still, if I lied on a loan application and got hundreds of millions of dollars, I would get in trouble for that. He should get in trouble for that.
Would you?
Well, I don't know, because I'm not a white collar fucking rich dude. Like, this is the problem. Like, when we looked into this guy's business dealings, we found out
this is the most normal thing on the planet, that everybody in real estate does this every single day.
Perhaps that's the bigger problem here. Perhaps that's what we should be focusing on.
Shark Tank?
The fact that there are very, very rich people that get away with this routinely. Maybe that's the bigger problem here, but it shouldn't be, well, Donald Trump should get away with it too. Like, that's not justice.
Sure, then let's prosecute everybody. Again, I'm fine with that. I am very, very fine.
I was unaware this was a crime.
Lying to get hundreds of millions of dollars in loans. You're aware that that's a crime.
I was not. I was aware that if you lied and then you were delinquent in your loan and then did not pay back, that there was some kind of mechanism for it. But I was not aware that if you lied on your loan application, got the loan, paid back the loan, and everything was on time with that, that was a crime. I was not aware of that.
How about the tax evasion?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the meat of this particular case was the loan stuff. The victims were the banks that said that they were fine with getting repaid. So that was something that I was just unaware of.
Well, I mean, it is a crime. It's a crime.
Okay.
So,
I'm just stupid. Just a dumb man.
And if it's to the point that we don't prosecute people to that extent, that in big money America, like, you don't get in trouble for blatant crimes, and it's just like, well, everybody does it, so it doesn't matter. Like, why even have laws?
Well, I guess again, I just want to be very clear on this. If somebody said, "Hey, I'm the prosecutor. These are the things that very much worry me about this particular actor. I'm going to go after them." That's one thing. It's another thing to go, "That guy's a menace. We'll figure out some way to punish him legally. The method to do it, not that important. Don't worry, we'll figure it out."
So
that's
I don't see those two things as all that different, because by the time this woman got elected, we knew that Donald Trump was a criminal. We knew it.
So like with Alvin, what's his name?
Alvin Bragg,
that is
the DA of New York City,
prosecuting Trump on the Stormy Daniels stuff, where
we've already discussed this. Stormy Daniels, that's a stupid fucking.
Okay, was that prosecutorial selection that was politically motivated, and was it okay?
I said even before we started talking that this probably wouldn't have happened if he didn't run for president.
Okay, well, that's the crux of the issue there. Is that, like,
I don't think that's the crux of the issue. I think the crux of the issue is that we have rampant white collar crime in this country.
Okay, then,
and that there are
prosecute
people,
all of it.
Exactly, which is what I said. But this man should not get away with it, because he is currently running to be the most powerful person in the world.
You don't have a problem with him being the hood ornament on a much larger car.
Not at all, especially where he still wants to be the most trusted, respected, most powerful person in the world. I don't think that it's right to give that person a pass.
You know, he DJs the music at Mar-a-Lago as dinner ends.
Ew.
There's a picture of him on an iPad, just like the most boomer photo ever of like him at Mar-a-Lago with his big ass iPad. And Mark Caputo, who now is working for the Bulwark. He was at the Messenger, but he's one of my favorite political reporters. He was like, yeah, it's because as dinner service at Mar-a-Lago winds down, he'll get his iPad, which has his Spotify playlist, and he'll just DJ his favorite boomer songs on the speakers. But that's the kind of feature that makes Mar-a-Lago worth $1 billion, apparently.
Honestly, I would go and see it. I would. I like boomer jams. Like, give me some Mustang Sally. Like, let's go.
No, apparently it was like there's like a Pavarotti James Brown duet of "It's a Man's World" that he really likes. Elton John, of course. A lot of boomer jams.
Yeah. It's a man's world. That sounds very Trumpy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of man stuff. Macho Man. He loves Macho Man. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's Raining Men?
I don't know if I haven't heard It's Raining Men at a Trump rally, but
what are the greatest hits that you hear at Trump rallies?
He likes Elton John.
Which Elton John though?
He likes whatever the top of the
Hold Me Closer,
Crocodile
Tony
Rock.
Danza.
Tiny Dancer is one of them. Crocodile Rock's another one. He does love the Village People, both YMCA and Macho Man. Fortunate Son, Born
You
in
don't
the
always
USA.
get what you want.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one.
Which did make me laugh out. Like I was like hate tweeting the whole Trump rally back in 2016, and then that came out. I burst out laughing. I'm like, that is really well put.
It's always super weird when the gay anthem Macho Man comes on, and it's just, I don't know. It's hilarious.
Do you think he knows
Yeah.
that it's a gay anthem?
Yeah. I don't.
For Trump's many moral problems, I don't think homophobia has ever been a big one of them. Like
he's a New Yorker. I don't know how he could be homophobic.
I mean, again,
he's probably said some really off-color shit about AIDS.
But he came in as, at the time of inauguration, in terms of policy, he was the most pro-gay president in American history up until that point. At the time of inauguration, compared to Obama at his inauguration, or Bush, or anybody preceding. I mean, so I don't think he's too bothered by that.
We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Keep on pushing my love over the borderline. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Super Bowl viewership data writes, the question of the Super Bowl's popularity this year versus past years intrigued me. So I threw a quick graph together in Excel to see if there was any discernible trend. From the data I had available, there was a slight uptick in viewership. However, when I looked at the data from 1980 onwards, it was basically no trend at all when it came to the percentage of viewers tuning in for the big game. This year is one of the more popular years, ranking 6th overall, but Super Bowl 20 in 1986 stands at the top at 38.97% of the population, which tuned in to watch the Bears destroy the Patriots. And let me throw it up here that was back when we were a proper country.
Stupid Bears.
Yeah. Super Bowl shuffle and all that.
Coach Ditka, great man.
Here we
Did
go.
I get it? Was it Coach Ditka?
It was Coach Dick.
Yeah, because I was watching Saturday Night Live back then. So I was able to get... I remember, like, stuff up till Nolan
Andrew,
Ryan.
You were 2.
Yeah, that's right. I was totally born in 84. That's right. That's the ticket. Yeah. I'm y'all's age. Yeah. 40, that's right.
Dancing Fool writes, quoting Andrew Heaton.
Wait, hold on. How the hell did you know that? Did you look it up?
No, I kind of paid attention to this up until Nolan Ryan retired. That's when I pulled out of sports. But I knew baseball reasonably well till Nolan Ryan retired, and then I was watching Saturday Night Live and stuff. And Coach Ditka, there was like Chris Farley, the Bears sketch, iconic with Chris Farley and all them, iconic.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Dancing Fool writes, quoting Andrew Heaton, I tried to learn to do the hustle back when I used to go to a disco club. Says a man who's somehow younger than I am.
Yeah, 40. Okay, so in this case, there was a wonderful club in Norman, Oklahoma called Opie's that I stumbled onto my senior year of college. Opie's was a disco club that didn't get the memo. Going strong into the early aughts. Shut down, I think, finally around 2017, which was a loss to our entire national character. But
another victim of Trump.
Yeah, you'd go in and like light up disco floor, wicker basket furniture, shag carpeting that probably hadn't been shampooed since the 70s, reeked of smoke. One of the best places. I was on the wall. I was so proud. There was a picture of me on the wall because I was the one that introduced, like, I came in and was like, this place is amazing. And at the time, it was just like old hippies and old farmers fighting over divorced women. That was the entire, that was the whole metric. And then I was like, no, this is great. Like, hipster wasn't a term yet, but I was like, I'll bring in the hipsters. So I started bringing in college students. So Opie fucking loved me because I was like the one that brought in anybody under 30. So they put a framed picture of me on the wall. And when I'd come in on a Friday, they would go, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Heaton has entered the building. And then they'd play Saturday Night Fever for me. I had my own theme song. It was amazing. I will never attain that level of fame again.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
The whistles go, whoop.
Wait, hold on. I also bought, when it went under, because I was in China, I asked my mom to go there to the going away sale, and I purchased through her a life-size plexiglass statue of Elvis winking that had been on the dance floor. So it's in my Aunt Marge's garage. Whenever I own a home, I'll have that memento from Opie's. Sorry, continue.
Oh, my God. Everybody, just take a moment and process that one. Whistles Go Woo writes, are the people who vote blue in Oakland, quote unquote, voting against their own interests?
What does that mean?
Well, I think voting against their interests was a term that you used a couple weeks ago when talking about people that would demonize progressives that might otherwise benefit from progressive policies. But this, I don't know who this emailer is coming from. It is also one of my most reviled terms in politics. I despise the term voting against their own interests.
I mean, if we're going to take this seriously, I'd say it depends. Like, if we're talking about Oakland and crime if they're voting for one of these idiots that's like, we have to defund the police, and then you complain about crime, like, yeah,
Which
you're
sounds
voting.
like an Oakland thing to do.
It does. But then there's also the other. So here's why I don't like red versus blue. That's my bigger bugaboo about this, where it's like both on team blue, you can have defund the police idiots, and then you can also have end qualified immunity people, which are like, if you kill a black kid for no fucking reason, you can be prosecuted for that as a cop. Like, that probably makes more sense than giving the cops no money and then getting upset that you have to have bars over all of your toothpaste and shampoo and stuff. But if you're someone that believes that poverty is a base issue here, that one of the reasons so many people are shoplifting is because it's so goddamn expensive to live in the Bay Area, and you want to do something about that, I don't think voting Republican is in your best interest, because you don't want your neighbors to be so poor that they have to steal things and rob you. So it's like, it depends on what your best interests are. But yeah, I think that's what I think.
I hate the term. I hate voting against. I think it is among the most patronizing things that can ever be said in politics.
It is, but you know what? I have encountered way too many people that are on a team because they're on a team, have absolutely no idea what the policies are, and then when you find out what they actually want from the government, it's the other team that wants to provide it. That I find incredibly frustrating, and I think that's why people say things like that. I've witnessed it in my own life.
I even at that point, I believe that people's opinions on who they're going to vote for are their own, and to assume that you can model out how your prescribed government solution would benefit them, I think, is patronizing or arrogant, or both.
Yeah, that's one of those things too, where it's like, generally when I'm voting against a policy, it's not because I disagree with the intent; it's because I don't think it'll work. Most of the time when I'm arguing, so if someone goes, why did you vote against that? It's in your own interest. I'm like, it's not because I'm against what you're trying to solve for. It's because I don't think you're going to solve for the thing you're trying to solve for.
But you are also thinking about policy. I think the reason some people say this is if people are voting like it's a sport, like I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, it's a part of my identity. I don't know what the fuck they do. I don't know what their policies are. And we know that there's plenty of people that do this. They've just picked a team and I vote for my team. There are people that are voting against. If you actually sit down and say, let's talk policy here, they'll talk about policies and you'll find out the person they vote for is against every single one of them. And I've seen it happen. And I think that's where that phrase comes from. Like, you're a different beast. I think all three of us are. We care about policy.
A disco beast.
But
Not like the dumbs.
There are dumbs that vote based on their team. And we all know this is true. He's going to... I know in his head he's like, this coastal elitist.
I would agree with you.
We need to speak for the entire audience.
Voting like, if you're deliberating on something and you end up with the Republican or the Democratic position, I might agree with you, I might disagree with you. Doing it because you're on red team for the win or you're on blue team for the win, and what they actually believe is fairly immaterial, is a dumb way to live your life.
It is.
And there are people to do that.
What's up, Docs writes, so why keep classified documents? Seems like every high-level exec keeps them despite the rules, but why? There's evidence Trump was showing them off, but what about everyone else? Forgetfulness? Laziness? Is this the political equivalent of the scrap plywood pile men keep in the garage just in case?
I have wondered this myself. I wonder if it's like a boomer thing, because I know in previous generations we didn't have digital files, and so it's like, keep mementos. Like, they'll have a shoebox full of tickets from sports games that they go to, and like they kept physical things. Is it like a memory thing? Because I can't imagine any scenario in which I would grab classified documents and like, oh, I'm gonna keep these in my Corvette in the garage. Like, why?
Just assumed it's a manpower time issue. I could be, again, this is all assumption. I haven't even thought about it tonight. I just always assumed that, like, your president,
you have something in common with the president.
Yeah, well, you're.
I didn't know that it was common.
You are hopefully directing your services or your employees within the executive branch towards the machinations of the state and running the government, rather than just laboriously going through documents that may or may not be something you could take home. So what do? You just take them all home and you figure you'll sort it later.
Here's the thing: why take any of them? You're not the president anymore. Do you need them?
Memoirs.
Why do you take them?
Memoirs.
Or sometimes the vice president, which you have even less classification for.
I don't know why you'd need to walk out of that office with a single box, let alone enough to fill up your garage.
I do believe it's usually the staff, and it's usually some element of what do you want to take, and then it's a checklist of a bunch of stuff. The staff takes a bunch of stuff, and then at some point you're going to figure out Do I keep it? Does it go in my presidential library? Do I donate it to something? There's a process of declassification that sometimes you wait. In general, I do think that there are a lot of quote unquote good reasons why this would be something that just lingers. I don't ascribe a ton of maliciousness to any of these cases.
No.
Obviously, Trump's case, where he got into a fight and refused and was obfuscating people wanting it back, that gets to a level of denial being the larger part of the crime for me. But in general, I don't think that there's a lot of maliciousness to this.
Yeah.
I do think that either we're going to take this shit seriously or we're not. And the most credible defense for Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case is, wait, I didn't know we were actually taking this seriously. I thought this was just the back and forth that normally happens. But yeah, there we go.
The presidential library part makes sense to me. I just feel like if I was walking out of the White House, I'm much more likely to walk out with the bust of Abraham Lincoln than I am with any paperwork.
Yeah, no one takes art.
Yeah, take the cool shit.
Wouldn't that? I remember when Clinton left, and it's weird because like I now look back on Clinton and George W. Bush Sr. and go, I don't even know what they fucking disagreed on. Like they were both economic neoliberals that were like I literally, and I do this for I don't know what they disagreed on, and I can't tell. So like I should now go like, oh, Clinton and Bush, good guys. But like back in the day though, growing up in Oklahoma, like no, Clinton was the worst person ever. He was the worst dude ever, and there were all. This is all like the beginning of bullshit email forwards that like dominate and like so I remember like being
chain faxes
that like told that like they had like brought 2 personal moving trucks to the White House and filled it with gifts and furniture and like it's probably bullshit. I have no way to know, but like I remember hearing that back in the day.
The Clintons did rip all the W's off the keyboards.
Yeah.
That was
it was a going away prank for George W. Yeah.
Did they really?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny. It's clever.
Great episode of The Weekly, Howard Mortman's The Weekly, the C-SPAN podcast that played it's the 25th anniversary of Monica Lewinsky's testimony to the Senate. And so her tape deposition, both from the Republicans and from the Democrats, but it ends with a bonus clip, a must-listen-to bonus clip of Joe Biden. You can find that on C-SPAN archives, of Biden at the Washington Press Club talking about the scandal, and he's asked like, well, you have a teenage daughter. Ashley Biden at that point was a teenager. What did she think of this? And he tells a very Biden story of, like I was getting ready. My daughter's a teenager. She barely talks to me these days, but she came running into the bathroom and asked me what I thought about it and whether or not it was true. Stormed off, left, and then came back into the house and said, well, it doesn't matter because everybody knew when they elected him that this kind of stuff was what he was about. And that was his like sad commentary on Clinton's failings morally. Whether or not it happened, who knows? It's Joe Biden.
Yeah. That was back during the Biden plagiarism era, too. That could have been from a wonderful Irish novel.
This is about a decade and a half away from the plagiarism.
It was definitely in his word vomit era, which is pretty much his entire life.
That's his entire
something
life.
that I knew. But
he kept all the word vomit in his wobble that he had facelifted away over the last 8 years.
Something I had forgotten, but that Justin put back in my brain on our field trip. Bill Clinton, younger than Biden and Trump.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know Bill Clinton, the doting former president from the fucking 90s?
Yeah.
Younger than the 2 frontrunners in the current election.
Don't stop thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah. If there weren't term limits, he would be equally
Turns
viable.
out when you think about tomorrow, it's dudes older than Bill Clinton that are running for president.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bridge to the 21st century. Maybe we should have.
Maybe I'll write in Jimmy Carter. Maybe I will. I don't know.
Libertarian emailer writes, as somebody who leans libertarian, I will never vote for a progressive, and RFK is a progressive. That doesn't mean that he couldn't be supported by the Libertarian Party, as there is a long history of libertarianism that we could discuss. Example, the term libertarian was coined to identify people on the left who are anti-state. Think about anarcho-socialists or anarcho-syndicalists. The reason that is now associated with the coalitions that Heaton correctly identified is due to the rebranding of progressives when it came out of style, where they took the proper name for what we know as libertarians, liberal. When that happened, people like Murray Rothbard, or in that vein, decided to disassociate themselves with both liberals and conservatives and took over the little-known libertarian moniker.
It's like label word salad.
Libertarian emailer writes, as somebody elected to public office while running as a libertarian, I feel like I need to speak out in response to jury. Blah, 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 Ron Paul Revolution, blah, blah, Rothbard, blah, blah, Bill Weld, blah, blah, Overton window, blah, blah, nobody else is a real libertarian, blah, blah, Austrian economics, blah, blah, blah. We're the only people who honestly believe in people's fundamental human rights, but also the people I'm mad at this week need to be dragged through the streets and executed by an angry mob. This emailer, I think he was actually a Patreon commenter. I put there, I will donate to your campaign. If you run again, I will donate. This made me laugh out loud. Libertarian emailer writes, Andrew Heaton has a bit of a point, but I think he misses the bigger issue when it comes to the Libertarian Party. The way I see it is that the real problem comes from hatred of people in charge. I remember finding out about Dave Smith 3 weeks before the Mises Caucus took over. In those weeks, I generally liked his message. But the second he won, I could only focus on the things I disagreed with him on and thought he would do wrong. Whenever I talk about other libertarians, I get a similar vibe as well. Jo Jorgensen was good until she was the actual nominee. Gary Johnson was good until he, quote-unquote, lost his backbone and caved on important issues. In reality, we really just love to hate political figures.
So something that has come up on the show a couple of times that I have attempted to clarify. Jen, you've stated a couple of times that libertarians are the most tribal, and I don't disagree with the energy you're talking about. But in terms of identifying the thing, I would say they're not tribal; they're ideological. They're hyper ideological, and purity tests are really, really big in the Libertarian Party compared to other parties.
Yeah, I just say they're useless. They make the DSA look like the 1960 Kennedy campaign.
Fun thing with the DSA, did you see this recently? The Democratic Socialists of America have this year a $7 million expenditure in their budget and raised $5 million. So a $2 million gap. Like, I was reading that going, let's put these guys in charge of the economy.
Yeah. What are they going to do, Jen? Vape me? Libertarian emailer writes, do they want to win? Absolutely not. They don't care if they win. They have picked their hill and they want to die on it. This applies to libertarians, Greens, No Labels, Reform Party, Constitutional Party, Marijuana Now Party, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Is the Marijuana Now Party an actual thing?
I don't know. If it ain't, it ought to be.
I think it was for a while. I mean, like, the older third-party model in America was not really having... Like in Europe, you have third and fourth and fifth parties. You have like the People's Garden Gnome and Female Circumcision Party, which will enter a coalitional government with the Italian, conservative party of Northern Tuscany or whatever. They've always had a multi-party system, which is what I want, by the way. I would love to have a multi-party system because I don't feel catered to in our current system. But under the dominant two-party system in the United States, we've kind of always had a two-party system. The way third parties work is they don't really become electorally viable mechanisms. What they do is they find an issue and they make it loud enough that one of the parties goes, well, shit, we'll do it. And they end up getting absorbed into it. So like the Marijuana Party, I think is a decent idea of like, if there are enough people that are going to throw the election and presumably the Democrats go, all right, we're for legalizing marijuana, then that group ends up getting absorbed into it, and it accomplishes its policy mechanism by becoming loud and then joining the two major parties.
It does make you wonder, what the hell are they waiting for? Like, it's such an easy one for Biden. Like, just deschedule marijuana.
Agreed.
You've got a youth vote. What are you waiting for?
Yes.
Libertarian emailer writes, I find it amusing that in the same conversation where everyone agreed that government is corrupt when it comes to administering ballot access, some think it would be a bad idea to introduce a few libertarians who distrust the government into the system. But somehow it got worse in the next breath. While expanding corporate regulation was mentioned, clueless to the irony of very sensibly desiring that reform be accomplished via people who distrust big business, it's the same problem. Libertarians distrust all concentration of power. We are consistently irritating.
Well put.
No. I did not agree that government is corrupt when it comes to administering ballot access. It's not government by its nature that is doing that. It is Democrats and Republicans who are rigging the system so that only Democrats and Republicans can win. It is private clubs that is making ballot access a problem. It's not government that's doing that. These people just blame government as if like there aren't actual human beings with different reasons for corrupting government to their own ends. It's the problem. The problem is the parties. It's not government. Like, God, libertarians are annoying.
I agree with this emailer. I think power is dangerous, and I don't think it's a question of who holds the power. Power itself is dangerous. I want to throw the ring into Mordor's volcano. Power itself is something we should always be skeptical of.
Libertarian emailer writes, RFK is responsible for children in Samoa dying of measles. He thinks herbicides cause transgenderism and vaccines cause autism. He thinks 5G is dangerous. HIV doesn't cause AIDS, and that antidepressants cause school shootings. All right, you almost had me until that last one. I kind of agree with that last one. As soon as these things continue to trickle out, it would be good not to be associated with him. He shouldn't be in charge of any federal agency, especially those that deal with any kind of science. Before anybody gets into a reaction, I want to say this, because I thought a lot about this RFK libertarian thing. RFK has probably the most famous name that will ever run if he were the nominee for the Libertarian Party. The Kennedy brand is something that is nationally known in an election when you're going to have very high dissatisfaction with the two major candidates. The argument for RFK would be that he could get over 5% and therefore get federal funds that would be given to the Libertarian Party that would be owed to them. You would materially be benefiting the Libertarian Party if it were able to get over 5%, which has not been able to in recent times. But I'm not even pitching that. I'm saying this. When we were in New Hampshire, the representatives of people who align themselves with the all-powerful Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party were pitching something that I found extraordinarily credible. I should learn the name of it, but I believe it's Restore the Guard.
Protect the Guard.
Protect the Guard. Essentially, it is a non-interventionalist policy wherein National Guard troops would have to be brought back to the states that they have enlisted in unless Congress declares a war, which it has not done in all the wars that you can think of in our modern era. Yes, let's say everything that you think about RFK in this is absolutely true. And to be totally honest, I don't know enough about RFK to say for sure that these are unkind or kind assessments of what he believes.
I know enough to say that some of this is bullshit.
Sure. He's a famous name, and if you made it a policy that he had to run on this, on protecting the Guard, that it was a non-interventionist thing, which very much fits in what he has said before, that is a common cause that you could run on, I do believe that, number one, you could make this a national issue, that either the Republicans or the Democrats would wind up subsuming it, and you could actually do what you say you want to do, which is save the lives and keep together some of the families that are right now deployed around the world. You could materially change foreign policy, and you could do it on the back of somebody who people are going to pay attention to because he is RFK's son. So that would be my tactical argument. Other than that, you are all right. All of you. All of you libertarian emailers. After reading all of your emails, I am here to tell you you're all correct and you've changed my mind.
I do want to say something to the substance of this email because I think there are perceptions of RFK that I think are in this that are not accurate. That are spread by people that hear things about RFK from other people who are talking about RFK. I think that if you actually want to know what he stands for and get an idea of him, it's a good idea to go and check out the Joe Rogan Experience interview that he did with RFK, where you get 3 hours of the man actually explaining what he thinks about things. I was under the impression that RFK was an anti-vax whack job. I walked out of listening to that really having a lot more respect for the man and paying a lot more of attention to his presidential campaign. And even if some of his suspicions sound like they're a little bit too much, at the end of the day, what that translates in when it comes to policy, especially as the head law enforcer in the country, is he's suspicious of vaccines. He's suspicious of herbicides. That just means that his FDA is going to make sure that there aren't dangerous things in our vaccines and our herbicides. I don't really see how we can be harmed by that. I'm more concerned about having things injected in my body and having poisons on my plants because it's easier for Monsanto. Like I see this version of crazy as less dangerous as, you know, a warmonger being in charge or someone who's chaotic and a criminal being in charge. Like, I just think that it's worth at this point, with all of the points that Justin just made, giving the guy a fair hearing. And I think the only way to do that is to hear what he actually thinks. And that is the best source of that I know of. So
Heaton knew a sports thing writes, you let it blow right by when Jen asked, what's a scrum? Heaton first said a rugby scrum. He knew a sports thing that she didn't. And then you went right into a scrum question. But still, wow.
Yay. Looks like our man Heaton is growing.
Yeah. And actually, so now that we're out of football season, you might as well have a Briny sports question of the week. Because I like football and volleyball. Outside of that, like...
Basketball playoffs? You're not going to tune in for basketball playoffs?
If the Lakers are doing well, I will. Now that the All-Star break, like I pretty much basketball season is entirely too long, so I will start paying attention at the All-Star break, which is right now. And if the Lakers are out of it, I'm out of it. I'll kind of pay attention if the Celtics are in, but really it's Lakers for me.
That's the most blasphemous thing, is that
Go.
you're Lakers.
Oh, my family does not like it,
Thunder.
but it is what it is.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Not this guy. You're going to ruin
James Harden, fear the beard. Although I think he's now left the Thunder.
He is. Yeah.
Traitor.
He's
dead to me.
He's on what team?
I don't know. This is the fucking thing where the sports franchises break down to me. Thunder moves to Oklahoma City. Everybody's thrilled. Yay, we have an NBA team. We're on
They're
the map.
good, by the way. They're good again.
Great. And everybody's like, yeah, they come to Oklahoma. And I'm like, but they, like some rich guys bought a team from Washington. And like all the people on the team were mercenaries. They didn't decide to move to Oklahoma and then decide to play basketball. They decided to play basketball and then they got contracted to Oklahoma.
All right. So here's the thing. Though.
They're mercenaries.
You're actually right in most professional sports. You're kind of wrong about Oklahoma City specifically.
Really?
Yeah. In general, people don't want to live in Oklahoma City, so they will leave. Like James Harden, they will get out as fast as they possibly can. So the nucleus of that team that was very promising and went to the finals all dispersed eventually. James Harden's now in L.A., but he has spent.
He
his
went
time...
from Oklahoma to L.A. Fuck
Which
that guy.
LA? Clippers are okay. I was going to say, there's no way he's a Laker.
But now they have a young core, and if that team resigns, then they are going to be making a pretty conscious decision that they don't want to play in New York, they don't want to play in LA, they don't want to play in Miami. They want to put down.
They
roots
like the
in
Plaza
Oklahoma
District.
City.
They
Yeah.
like the milk bottle. They like the botanical garden. I could go on. Okay.
I like Oklahoma City. I actually told Joe that I want to live in a tower in the middle of Oklahoma City so I can watch all the tornadoes and shit during the spring.
You would find plenty of tornadoes in Oklahoma during that. Yeah, it's good. It is a good tornado area.
And they have like 15 Chipotles. It's way more than they possibly need, but I'm into it. I do. And I've never seen so many Chipotles per capita as I have.
You were very against ads, but if Chipotle came and said that they wanted to sponsor the show, would you be afraid that it would taint your political commentary too much?
Do you know, I've actually considered this. I was like, if Southwest Airlines and Chipotle came to me, like I'm advertising for them anyway, I don't think I could take their money, but like, yeah, I don't think I could take their money, to be honest about it.
Your money.
Hey,
You're a whore, though.
I got a big picture question for you and potentially for listeners.
I'll take the free burritos that you get.
A working whore.
Yes.
A working whore that fucking has us in a studio making a show.
How about a partnership where
Okay.
Chipotle pays you, but you give me all the free burrito coupons that they give you?
Yeah. Good.
Do I get
Deal.
money?
Nope, you get burritos too.
Oh,
Thank Jen.
thanks, Jen.
He's the Oprah of burritos.
Last time I let Jen negotiate for me.
Sorry, Heaton. You'd be tainted. Your simple mind would be tainted.
Can't handle it.
A balanced media diet brings this on home. If you poll progressives, there would be like 1% support for the idea that white cis males are inherently evil. You'd get 95% support for the idea that white cis males are a relatively privileged class within society. Anyway, when you poll conservatives, you actually do get hefty majorities that believe in great replacement, stop the steal, pandemic, etc. I have to say that anecdotally, my entire daily process of consuming political content consists of the outlets I trust, reacting to and dunking on things that conservatives say and do. So it's kind of impossible not to be extremely informed on what they really believe, whereas conservatives seem to only ever encounter left-wing views as straw men on Fox News.
This is exactly what I was talking about, but the opposite. Where it's like, this guy is just consuming. Like, that's amazing that he even admits it. That his view of conservatives.
That's what I had. That's what it was like the I think you should leave schedule. Like, oh my God, he admitted.
Yeah, he admitted it. Like, this is like conservatives actually believe in great replacement, stop the steal. Like, I was hanging out with a conservative elder gentleman this weekend. He's perfectly reasonable, believes in fiscal responsibility. Like, my dad believes in fiscal responsibility. Like, these caricatures that we have of the other side. And like, it's so, like, whatever you are watching daily that consists of dunking on things conservatives say, stop it. Stop watching it. They are doing you a disservice. You're better off watching something that's telling you the news as opposed to dunking on the other team. This is not helpful.
If you want to see what it's always going to be better for you to go where there are smart conservatives and smart progressives. And by the way, they're in writing. Like, there are smart people that work in television, but if you actually want to encounter what smart conservatives think, you're going to do that. So part of this that I like is I think that you're probably correct, listener, when you say that if you poll progressives, there would be like 1% support for the idea that white cis males are inherently evil. That it's not going to be all of them.
I almost full on reject that entire argument, because polling is so dependent on how you word questions.
Yeah.
Like, I could write a poll that would get over 50% of progressives to, in some way, write a question that insinuates that white men are in active danger and should be arrested.
Yeah.
But like the empathy that he has for these progressives, saying like, listen, like, they're more reasonable than you think. Like, he has that in the first two sentences and then goes the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Well, and see, and that's the bit that I want to bring up here, is that, like, the part that I see all the time, and I saw this when I worked at certain conservative outlets, is they're not trying to identify the median on the other team. That is not a advantageous model for getting clicks. What they're doing is going for the most colorful shitbags. This is how partisan media works. Partisan media focuses on colorful shitbags, not the median. So, like, guess who the median voter is in the Democratic Party? The average voter in the Democratic Party, median group, is a white non-evangelical Christian. Would you have guessed that based on media portrayal? Probably not. But it's actually very similar to the median voter in the Republican Party. That's because the conservative media is not focusing on the median or the average. And to your point, I assume that you're watching this for entertainment when you say you're watching them dunk on Fox. But keep in mind that the conservative media, like any partisan media, is not even trying to exemplify what their team thinks. They're trying to get eyeballs. They're trying to get clicks. They're trying to get outrage. And then you then add another layer of media analysis to that, of actively selecting the dumbest, most outrageous stuff, then taking it out of context and dunking on it. You're going to get a really, really warped view.
It's true. And you can tell by the celebrities on whatever media you're consuming. So it's like, if you're consuming media that's talking all about AOC or Marjorie Taylor Greene, those are two relatively not powerful people in Congress. But if you know who Jim McGovern and Jeff Sessions are in the House of Representatives, you're probably better served. And I'm guessing very few people know who they are, but they're extremely powerful. They're Rules Committee chairman, or at least Jeff Sessions. I don't know if he's there anymore, but he used to be a chairman. Whatever. Yeah. These are people that actually have power, whose names you should know if you're actually consuming serious media. But if you are up on whatever Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing, you're being wildly
you're a pay
misinformed.
Pig. You're a suckling little pay
if you want to have
that is donating.
Pay pig?
Yeah, no, they punch you in the belly and coins fall out, but based on highlighting dumb, outrageous stuff. That is what they do. You are in a financial dom sub relationship.
I have a far less colorful addict, or far less colorful contribution there. I would suggest listeners do one of two things if they want to better understand reality of the other team. And by the way, I want to note this as well, that while the listener brings up, I think accurately, that partisan media is taking anecdotal outliers and making them broad, he then goes on to say that conservative, what is it? Basically, that conservatives are only getting their media from, a crazy Fox News talking about the progressives. Something to keep in mind is that when they do polling and surveys, that conservatives tend to pass the political Turing test at a higher rate than progressives do. That is to say that conservatives, when asked and spoken to, generally have a better idea of what progressives thinks than the other way around. I think that that's probably just a product of the fact that conservatives are getting media from the coasts, whereas the coasts are not getting media from the center. But all of this is sort of incidental to just where we are as people trying to better understand reality. You can do one of two ways in my mind. You can either try to look at some sort of data analysis, although Justin points out there could be problems with it. Or if you don't even want to do it in terms of data analysis, but just in terms of good faith arguments, surely you have a conservative friend or a progressive friend that you respect. Surely. And if you don't have a conservative or progressive friend that you don't respect, get the fuck out of politics. If you have such a myopic worldview, you have no one you disagree with. I doubt that's anybody that listens to the show.
There's a guy listening on a remote base station in Alaska being like, what the fuck?
You know what? I do every year at Christmas, I do a live Zoom call for anybody that's stranded or abroad or whatever. We actually did have a guy on an oil derrick this year who came in. So,
nice.
but he struck me as a very sociable guy. But I think if noting that it's very difficult to ascertain the actual average of 130 million people in any given time, why not default on the smart version of the opposition rather than the dumb version of the opposition? Why not preemptively operate in a good faith space?
I think, yeah, consume that stuff, but understand it's candy. Like sometimes candy tastes good. It's great, watch a political streamer, Hassan Abi dunk on the chuds. That's fine. If that's what you're into, then that's cool. But in general, don't think it makes you smarter, and certainly don't think that it gives you an accurate portrayal of the state of play, at least in my opinion. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. On PX3 this week, we have the border episode. So if you want to listen to some of the stuff that happened on the border and hear my reaction as I experienced it, then go ahead and listen to that. But also, Jen, on last Friday's episode of PX3, I interviewed a man who runs super PACs. In fact, it happened right after you guys left recording last week.
Oh, this is who we were kicked out for.
Oh, yeah, when you told us to get the fuck out of your house.
Okay,
yeah.
To get
Yeah,
out
I remember that.
because I had to do that interview. I would be very curious your opinion on that interview.
Okay.
It is somebody that has he actually bankrolled the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, the other Donald Trump New York City lawsuit.
That's right, because he's a criminal rapist as well.
What? Civil rapist. Civilly liable rapist.
Civil as in, like, he'll take you to dinner first.
Civil, yeah. In that, yeah. So he was not convicted of rape. He was convicted he was held liable of saying that he didn't rape her.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave the rape jokes to Jen and the clarifications to Justin, and I'm going to sit here on the couch. You guys go ahead.
PX3. Jen, what are you working on?
I'm working on a summary of the first 2 months of this year in Congress, and I will have that out by the end of February.
Nice.
I'm coming back to work.
Good.
Well, you have so much to work with.
I honestly do. It's funny because I'm going to start the show just being like, so Congress did fucking nothing, but let me tell you how the nothing happened. Like, it's amazing how much airtime can be wasted on Congress accomplishing exactly nothing.
Yeah,
the Duck Stamps Act. Do I need to draw your attention to electronically passing out duck stamps for hunting purposes? This is one of the most active professional Congresses in the history of the Republic, if not the world.
Did they actually pass that?
I don't know.
I've heard debates about it, actually. Duck stamps
I'm pretty sure they passed it. Yeah, I think they passed it.
I don't think in this Congress. This Congress hasn't done shit.
Yeah.
Okay, listeners, help Uncle Heaton out here. I'm pretty sure they got electronic duck stamps taken care of. I'm pretty sure that's an accomplishment they got.
Is that what you're covering on the ORF?
No, I have a really fun deep dive history episode on the ORF. So normally, I think we tend to look at politics either ideologically or socioeconomically. I would say those are the two predominant strains that we use on this program, or at least that I use on this program. There's an older methodology to looking at politics as a function of regional culture. And that's exemplified by, say, like Colin Woodard, who wrote The Nations of America. I did a double episode this week, a 2-hour special on this phenomenon in America. And I'll give you an example of it, of the kind of the idea that's underlying this worldview is when you look at greater Appalachia, so West Virginia, Kentucky, all the way down through Oklahoma and parts of Texas, kind of in a big crescent there, cowboy culture. Like cowboy hat, cowboy music culture. The people that kicked that off, that came to Appalachia, the first white settlers that came there and have a role in our continuity, were Scotch-Irish border people who had been kicked around by governments of Scotland or England and really, really, really did not trust royal authorities. They looked at royal authorities as thugs that were at best doing a protection racket, that wore a crown and purported to be appointed by God, but you wanted them to stay the hell away from you and you wanted to deal with shit on your own. And you can kind of see that through line in American politics today in that part of the country. Then you look at New England. The people that originally populated New England were Puritans who came over to establish a government. and they were very congregationalist, and they were all part of the same community, and their worldview was, we all need to be on the same page. We're all part of the same team. We need to be in this together. Don't be selfish. Don't go do your own thing. And if we just get the right tools to the right people, we can engineer a utopia. And I think you can see strains of this through politics. I think at some point this turns into horoscopes, but it's a fascinating conversation about if you were looking at America as composite nations, not states, but the kind of underlying cultural worldviews in America, what would the countries be? And we come up with 11 to 15. Fascinating episode on the political orphanage.
Look at that. Well, folks, you can listen to that and so much more. But that's it for us today. For Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young, and we're not wrong.
Jump in, bathroom, I can go either way.